Good evening, everyone. I welcome you to tonight's Educational Affairs Committee meeting. Apologies for the late start. We had some technical difficulties, but we are now ready to go. My name is Leah Mulhearn, and I will be co-chairing tonight's meeting until co-chair Mia Blitzstein arrives. And with that, I will take a motion to approve the minutes from the last Educational Affairs Committee meeting. Jeffs, second.
Second.
Ms. Lohman, thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries, and the minutes. I didn't take a roll call. Thanks. I'm out of practice. All right, we'll do a roll call. Go around the table, starting with Dr. Watt.
Caroline Watts present.
Robin Murphy present.
Jenny Lohman present.
Zachary Epps present. Charles Burdell Williams present.
Daniel Schultz present.
Do I really have to do that motion again? I do. All right, so we will now take a motion to approve the minutes from the April Educational Affairs Committee meeting. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Mr. You can do that. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Dr. Watts. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Now that time the motion does really carry, and I'm going to turn it over to someone more qualified than I am right now to run a meeting. Ms. Rachel Girman.
Fair kind. Okay, so we have for you tonight a couple of things about our graduation updates, as well as our special education updates, and our EPIC alternative program updates. So if you can click to our next slide. Clicking. Yeah. This was our Cedar Brook East Leadership Academy program. They had their tie ceremony last couple of weeks. That's the photo that you have there. And as always, our essence, belonging, becoming, and excelling. Our diversity gives us strength, but our essence defines our purpose, our why. It's what connects us physically and emotionally to a greater good. CSD is driven to provide a place where all belong, students, families, staff, and community, and where all can become the greatest version of themselves. We all have talked about before our mission and vision, so I will keep moving. All right, so here's again our plan for tonight. We'll start first. This is going to be, I'm not Siobhan Savage. It's a new confused. I am not that cool. But as the version B, I guess, of Siobhan, I'll be talking about graduation in the Act 158 pathway report. And then Dr. Kat and his team will talk about special education updates. Dr. P will talk about the gifted education updates. And then I'll talk about planning for our EPIC program for next year. Right. So again, not Siobhan Savage, but this is our report, and this is even slightly tweaked from earlier today. But class of 2026 as of today, so our current Act 158 status completed is 329 students out of approximately 421. 108 of those students completed the Keystones, 68 of them completed the Keystone Composite. Our CTE pathway, that's 4 students, that's our career technical education. Most of those are students who come from Eastern. Alternative assessment, 25, and evidence-based, 111. We have 91 students who have not completed, and then NA, we have 5 students. Those are our students who are our CAP students, child accounting students who are not technically in our building, but are part of our reporting process. So that puts us at about, this number was 78.3%. With our most recent updates later in the afternoon today, we have about 81.7%. So we're still not where we need to be with what that number is. The state requires us to meet at least 95% record for graduation pathway passing. So we have about 15% of our students, about 13% of our students still left to meet that. I know our guidance team is meeting with those students today and tomorrow in order to try to make sure that they do that. The state does say they're not supposed to graduate if they don't meet this pathway. This is something that was enacted last year at full scale. And so I think that it's still something that our students are trying to understand just how much they really have to do it. So that's where we are with that. And then current graduation status, students who have attained or should attain their credits, 374. Potentially undercredited students are 42. If you do the math, there is a discrepancy between these two columns because of the cap students. So that's what that number discrepancy is.
How does that compared to previous years?
It's about the same, about 100, about a third of our students, no, about a quarter of our students passing the Keystone. It's a little bit better than it was. I think if I remember correctly, last year we were around 18% passed through the Keystone pathway. We were a little higher this year, which is great. We want it to be trending upwards. I think our CTE pathway number is a little bit lower, but our evidence-based pathway is definitely the more popular one. Not popular, but the more common one, if not. So in terms of weighting of each one, it's about the same, but we are seeing a slightly higher number for our Keystone pathway than we had last year.
Is this the last slide on the graduation to have this report, or is there another slide?
There's one more slide next, but it's not really, it's a little bit more of this, but there's only 2 slides for this.
Let's get to that and then we'll do questions.
Got it. All right, so a couple of pieces of information on top of what I had said. So for Act 158, there are additional credential sessions being offered for students who need them. Again, this is where our counseling team is meeting with students today and tomorrow. There is also data pending for our CAP students and our EPIC students. CAP students have to be reported by us. This is a little bit difficult for us with the state because these are students who are not actually in our physical building. They're not part of our programming necessarily. Some of our CAP students, and Ms. Smith can talk more about this, but some of our CAP students go out and then come back in relatively quickly over the course of time. So those are students that we would still report on. It always just sort of depends on the timing of when those students go out and come back in. If they are currently out and then have not passed a pathway, they are still required to do that. And now it becomes a matter of trying to make sure that they have the information to meet those requirements. Students who are listed as non-reporting are students we don't have. Anything that I said that was incorrect about that? Okay, all right, thanks. And then in terms of credit attainment, there's been ongoing communication between our counselors and our families about students' credit progress. And then students who are undercredited as of the first semester of the year, they were notified by their families were notified by counselors that they were potentially not going to graduate, or if students were at risk of not walking, they were also notified. So there is a current and pending summer school enrollment. Some of our students have already started enrolling. They haven't started the courses yet, but they've enrolled in our summer school classes. Students who are missing 2 or fewer credits out of the required 28 can walk in graduation. They just can't get their diploma until they can actually meet the requirements. If students are missing more than 2 credits, then they cannot walk with their class. So that communication becomes really important for families to understand, because obviously it's a big deal. Basically the difference between them being able to actually have a graduation ceremony and not. So that's the end.
Thank you, Ms. Girman. Any questions about, or at this moment?
Just again, could you tell me what CAB stands for? Child Accounting Building.
Child
Accounting Building. Child Accounting Building.
Can you explain who would be considered that? I know, but I don't want to say it wrong.
So in students that we still have to report to the state, but they aren't physically in our buildings. So if you have a student that's on our virtual learning network, they are put in a CAB building. If you have a student who is at the youth center, they are put in a CAB building. They're not physically here, but we still have to account for them for state reporting.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying.
So it's not someone who's enrolled in a charter school or anything else. It's a complete different.
Could be
I'm
instruction.
just saying
at
it's to
home
make it
or
very.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Thank you. Any other board? Oh, yes.
Oh, sorry. I do have a question. Could you go back to the other slide? The evidence-based. I'd like you to explain a little bit about that, because I say this because there was an article recently in Chalky. We got it all that covers Philadelphia and other school districts that I did share with the board. And it said in 2025, 23.2% of CSD's graduates graduated through the evidence-based graduation pathway. And 100 of those graduates met requirements with industry credentials. By way of comparison, in 2025, 2.9% of Norristown's graduates graduated through evidence-based. 3% of Upper Dublin graduated through evidence-based. And 4.3% of Wissahickon graduated through evidence-based. The gist of this article was that the article's point of view was that they were concerned that Philadelphia and other districts were overusing the evidence-based pathway. Particularly around getting credentials for kids that they couldn't really use, but they were considered credentials, so they could then pass through evidence-based. Could you talk a little bit about why we're so high in this category and what it is?
Yeah, I would be super interested in what the other percentage areas were for this district. But so what the evidence-based pathway, the intention from the state was actually initially for a very small window of time, there was an expectation that all students had to pass the Keystone exams in order to meet graduation requirements with the state. And very quickly, I think not even a year into it, it happened right around COVID. Very quickly, the state was like, wait, no, that's not a good idea. That is a really narrow way to decide that students are life ready post-primary or post-high school. So instead, they came out with the pathways options. And the idea is these 5 pathways are meant to provide a diversity of opportunity for students. So that's why the first 2 still adhere to the Keystone piece. Either you straight pass each of the exams, or you pass at least 2 of the exams with a high enough score, whatever their cut score is, that meets that requirement. CTE is a huge piece of that. And I think I'm going to guess in some of those districts, they probably have a higher percentage on the CTE category. Those are our students who are going to the technical school. We do not have a high percentage of students going to Eastern in our high school. Other schools have higher percentages often, especially as you go north. In the county, you'll see more and more of that. The way that the CTE programs work, they're similar to industry recognized credentials, except they have a program and a class associated with it. Which is why if students pass a CTE course, they usually pass a NOCTI exam. They might pass the pre-NOCTI exam or the post, depending on when their program takes those exams. The state did make some allowances for that, because initially they only allowed students to pass the post-NOCTI. Oftentimes those results didn't come until June, which was unreasonable.
I'm going to just interrupt you there for a second. So does that mean we have only 4 kids graduating from Eastern, or only 4 kids graduating through the CTE?
It may be that they have only 4 students pass the pre-NOCTI exam at the point of this. So they take 2, one at the beginning, one at the end of the year. They have just recently taken the post exam. So we'll have to look and see what those results are from Eastern. I'm confident we should have gotten them by now. If we did not already, I'll contact them. Yeah.
But I would have, and I guess as a question, me thinking about looking at those numbers, some of those students at Eastern, they're not graduating via the CTE because they have already met the Keystone requirement.
Right.
So it doesn't
That's gonna
mean
be
that
correct.
there's only 4 students.
Precisely, yeah, that was going to be the second piece of that. That if a student, so the pathways are listed as 1 through 5. If you pass multiple pathways, it goes in order of number. So if you pass the Keystone, even though you may have passed your CTE, it falls under the Keystone. So that could be the other piece of that, is that students have passed multiple. Same thing goes with college requirements or college entrance. So if students get into a 4-year college, the state adjusted from the beginning of the first year that they did it or the second year that they did it. It used to be if you were accepted to a 4-year program or a 4-year school, you're good. Then it was actually you need to be accepted to a 4-year school and the program within the school. So some of our students are using that. So again, it's not that we only have 25 students who have been accepted to college. Most of our students would have passed the Keystone in one of the other 2 places. And then if they didn't pass them, then they're passing through that alternative assessment.
So then why, I'm still not really understanding how we end up with 111 students graduating through this sort of nebulous evidence-based pathway.
So I actually would disagree with the characterization of the article. As much as it is a total pain to try to document for that pathway, it was the attempt on the part of the state to recognize that there are multiple ways for students to demonstrate that they're successful. So it is things like industry recognized credentials, and I will absolutely own that most of our students do pass that way. But it is also things like dual enrollment. I know that at least one student, all 3 of her evidence-based are through dual enrollment classes that she passed, but she hadn't passed the Keystone exams. It is also things like service learning projects. It's also things like a letter of full-time employment, military enlistment. I'm trying to think of what else falls into that category. It is an industry recognized credential. Industry recognized credential is essentially the CTE programming without the actual course associated with it. It's just the test. As much as we want to get to a place where what we're trying to get to is a place where those credentials are baked into the classes themselves. We have not gotten there yet in high school. But for example, one of the things we're working on, and we have a health teacher who is certified in CPR, is that there is a CPR credentialing that can happen for students where they get a credit through that. Through our financial literacy class next year, all students are going to be required for class of 2027 and after to have passed that. Part of that will include a credential for financial literacy that they can get through a program called Everfund. So we're trying to build those into the classes so that it's part of their content. It is not at this point. So the answer to the question, I don't think it's a bad thing to have a high percentage of students in that category because I think it allows our students to access their ability to graduate from a bunch of different ways. But like I said, I would be curious about where the other high percentage points are. I know our Keystone scores are not where they need to be. And I would imagine for most of those schools, especially with Hickman and Upper Dublin, they're probably double where we are in terms of what the Keystone scores like for their students. So that's probably where most of their numbers are coming from. And then I would imagine for Norristown, they would have a higher percentage of students in Eastern, or not Eastern necessarily, but through their technical programming, that they may be passing through that.
Hey, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that because it is actually a really long article. I will share it with you.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot of information in it. The other question, and this maybe sort of piggybacks on the next part of the presentation a little bit, is I'd be actually curious how many kids with IEPs are graduating through an evidence-based pathway, and as opposed to Keystone Attainment or CTE alternative assessment or whatever it might be. Really interesting.
Well, before we answer that question, can I just jump in and give some additional clarity? Hi. I know it's like I did a voice come out of the sky. My apologies. It's really interesting because I was actually the deputy superintendent in Philadelphia when we brought the Act 158 pathways online because it was shortly after the pandemic. And we were actually looking at the different types of pathways and the evidence presented. And I did just want to make explicit and clear as well that these pathways are not exclusive. We will see students that actually could satisfy documentation from multiple of these pathways. What we have actually endeavored to do, and what I know Philadelphia was doing when I was there, we were using the evidence-based pathways to collect up enough evidence early enough in students' careers that we would satisfy the Act 158 pathways early so it wouldn't be a rush right before graduation. And I think when you think about it that way, it makes it a little more clear as to why the evidence-based pathway can be higher. Because obviously with Keystones being a challenge for many of our students, some of our students who, have testing anxiety or don't test well, some students who may have missed Keystones and are, waiting for scores right now, we did not want to put them in a circumstance whereby they wouldn't know at this point in time whether or not they had passed a pathway. So our counselors have started collecting evidence earlier in the years, and they are capturing as Ms. Girman stated, letters from employers, dual enrollment grades, and so forth earlier in the school year, which is why we do have the attainment that we have, because part of it is planning as opposed to, and trying to be proactive instead of being reactive.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Salmon. Any other board questions, Mr. Epps?
Appreciate the information presented. I wanted to hear a little more around the not completed section, given somewhere around 27% or so. And so you mentioned conversations with guidance counselors and families, but can you elaborate a little more, given where we are in the school year?
Yeah.
Just what that actually.
Yeah. So one of the things that we have to do a better job of, and it's a conversation that's ongoing, is making sure that students are finished by the time they finish junior year. That's really what's supposed to happen. At this point, what's happening instead is that they're finishing senior year, which is not how that should be going. We shouldn't be chasing students. So that's a structural issue or a processing issue on our part that we need to work on. And then the other piece of it is, I think that there are probably multiple instances over the course of the state education system where things have been put into place and then shifted. And so I think sometimes our students like to play chicken to see how serious a requirement is, to see if it will go away. And that's not, I don't fault them for that at all. I can understand, right? Totally human, and we all only have so much time. So I also think that there's part of it where they're wondering if I really have to do it. And I think that sometimes there's a level of expectation that they don't always understand, that we have to do a better job of conveying to students. So I won't say that it's anybody's ownership but ours to do a better job of communicating to students how much we mean it when we say you're not going to walk if you don't do this because it's a state requirement. And then also making sure that we are organized structurally so that they're finished by the time they're done their junior year, that we're not chasing.
Just a quick follow-up. Second, a bit of what Ms. Loman was talking about. I think disaggregating this data would be very interesting, not for tonight, but disaggregating the data would be really interesting in ways. How much crossover is there between the potentially predicated?
Often pretty close. So when, for example, we have a tracking document where it lists students who are potentially undercredited, and did they pass Act 158? Are they where they need to be with the credits? I wouldn't say that the majority, but there's a decent number, enough to notice that there is some overlap there. There's some common issue of students not completing graduation requirements and not completing credit requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Epps, for asking the majority of my questions around tonight. The only thing I want to make sure I understand is that number is as of today, and it could change up until.
It already changed from when we did the slides to now.
And so it really is up until graduation itself.
It's actually even October. October 1 is our reporting deadline for students. In terms of who graduated, that's when we have to report final numbers to the state. No one advocates for that because trying to chase children after they graduated, horrible. So yes, really what we try to cut off at graduation. But if there are students, it more so happens with credits in summer school. Usually we're chasing more for that after the fact and trying to make sure that our information is accurate for students who have completed their credit requirements. But they do have until right before October 1st. That's
a lot of lines. These are interim numbers, not final numbers.
Correct, not at all. Yep. And we will post the final numbers. We're required by law, but also we will anyway post them so that you can see them.
Any other board questions on this part? Any questions from the public on the graduation and Act 158 pathway? If you're in the room or online and have a question on this, you can raise your hand and state your name and where you reside in the township and ask a question. Seeing no hands, we can move on. Okay. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. So I know it's been a minute since we reported out on special ed in February. And one of the things that we promised to bring back was data. Then Mr. Epps did the segregated data piece. There are bits and pieces in this presentation that show that. I have a feeling you asked for different bits and pieces of information because we talked about it the last meeting. It'd be too much to present. So I just wanted to give an overview of where we are with that. This was presented in February. This just gives you a background of our staffing and how we operate in our special ed department. 50 teachers, 84 district paraprofessionals. We have an additional 13 RBTs. We just had another district paraprofessional pass and become certified RBT yesterday. So we are also changing and our numbers are growing as well. One of the pieces that I thought would be interesting to report out to you and the public would be the special education data reporting system, which is a state system. And we have different indicators and different benchmarks we must meet as a special education department in the state of Pennsylvania. And in indicator 3D, we have what's called a gap in proficiency rates. So that is all part of the state performance plan that comes out. So basically what this means is when it looks for the indicator 3, typically reporting out on 4th, 8th, and high school, the gap basically explained is like this. If in 4th grade, 50% of the students were proficient or advanced in the PSSAs, and only 30% of students with IEPs were proficient or advanced in PSSAs, the gap would be 20%. Does that make sense? So we want that gap to be low. We don't want it to be big. So here we're looking for low numbers. All right, so what I did was I broke out 23, 24, 24, 25. You can see the numbers right there in the gap proficiency rate. On the right-hand side, the 23, 24 numbers tell us whether or not we met that target. So what you have there, for example, is an ELA in 4th grade. The LEA, that's us, that's the Cheltenham School District. Okay, the gap rate was 38.80%. And the state average gap rate was 30.80%. So what that means is, and I don't know what the overall proficiency number is. So if you just round that up to 40, again, if it was 60% for all 4th graders, that would mean that for 4th graders with IEPs, it would be 20% or 22%, because again, it would be 30. That makes sense. I'm going to leave this up. I think that it's on the right-hand side is 23, 24. 24, 25, we do not have whether or not we met the target or met the state target because that hasn't made it yet. I'll slide over here. So you have the state rate. So if you look at what the state average gap was between students with IEPs, okay, in 8th grade on the ELA PSSAs, it was 36% for the state. All right, it was 31%. So it was actually better. Does that make sense? All right, and then over there was 24, 25. Again, hasn't been calculated out to tell us what our target was and whether we met the target. I'm not going to go through all this, but you can tell me when. Go ahead. Is that okay? I'm sorry, I'm not the chair.
There weren't some questions. It's just that
It's numbers and data. Yep.
Clarifying question on the target, are those are specific to our district, the
Right here.
target column? That's not statewide target. I understand the state rate is the average across the state.
Mm-hmm.
The target, is that the state's target for itself, or is that the state's calculated target for us based on margin?
That's our target.
Our target.
So our target is to get to 29.5. We didn't meet that. Here, see how much closer it is?
So just to talk through a narrative, but it's helpful to others. But so for grade 4, last year our gap was 38.8. This year our gap is 29.9.
Correct.
Now it is a different cohort, correct?
Correct. It's a different cohort, so you're right. And I actually have cohort data on the next slide.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point because it is a different set of 4th graders, but it, at least it shows that our gap has closed. Okay, and then this just gives you a summary of that past slide. So I know it's a lot of numbers. All right, but so just some highlights. So in ELA, right, in 4th grade, for example, the gap decreased by 9.2%, 0.3 lower than the state rate. The previous year was 8% higher than the state rate. I know we could spend a lot of time on this, and that's okay. Again, this is the comparison from 23, 24 to 24, 25.
This is taking the data from the slide before. And
Correct.
comparing 20.
Yeah, just trying to.
And it just showing the same numbers in a different.
Yes. So anywhere you see gap decrease, that's what we want, the gap to decrease. Yeah, Mr. Schultz is pointing 2 different colors.
do we want to do a few questions now? I see some faces.
I can go back to
We
it.
need some questions.
I'm just, maybe I missed this what is this measure?
It's measuring the, so again, it's measuring, for example, math, it's PSSAs.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's math, fourth grade in math, the gap between the PSSA scores for all of fourth grade and then the PSSA scores for students with IEPs. We want those numbers to be as close as possible. Now, obviously, we know the reality is that those numbers probably don't always get as close as we want them because, you know, students who are reading perhaps near a second grade level or are in fifth grade or taking fifth grade tests, because it can't be in the ELA portion.
We have any more questions? I just feel like it's, again, because it's data we haven't seen before, I want to allow time if there's another question.
Public comment
After the board has comments. But usually we finish the section, is this section?
No, we got,
There's a huge.
there's the data section and then we get into some programmatic sections. So a couple more slides will be done in the data section.
Let's try to finish the data for everyone, for all of it, and then we'll do questions for the board and questions for the public, and before we get to the program side.
Okay, so this is the cohort data. Okay, so what I did was I went all the way back to 2021. So I know it's a little bit convoluted, so take your time, but you have over here, you have math on the right, you have ELA on the left. And in the green, you have, this is what it looked like for the 8th graders in 24-25. And then if you go back here, when they were in 4th grade during the 2021 school year, this is what it looked like there. Does that make sense? Okay. So again, on the ELA side, for example, the 8th graders, the LEA rate was 35.8, the state rate was 35.2. That group, if you look at that 4th grade group, the state rate was 33.7%. When in 4th grade, that gap was really big. By 8th grade, that gap closed. That's
We're
a
still
good
talking about the same gap, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but here the difference is we're talking about the same group of kids.
Yes.
Stayed relatively the same, increased, right? We don't want to see that. But I think to Ms. Girman's point about sometimes, you know, taking the test at that point in time and be a little wishy-washy as they get older. No excuses. The gap is what it is. And you can see here, it increased a little bit, but not dramatically on the ELA side. This was when they were in 8th grade in 21-22 and then 11th grade in 22. Okay, so that's the data piece. There's other data at the end, but then there's other
So
things.
let's do
Yeah.
questions. I don't know, Ms. Felicine, if you would like to take over, or if you would like to continue chairing.
I apologize for my lateness.
That's it. So if there are any more questions, then we'll go to the public on the data.
Regarding cohorts, 4 years feels like a very large amount of years to be able to track inputs and outputs. And I'm curious, I recognize that as a structural.
That's the state.
That's the
Yep.
state's
Yep.
situation. Do we have any potential mechanisms to fill in between internally? I know with for instance, I know we have diagnostics and other data points that are not PSSAs, but ours, for lack of estimates of PSSAs, and so we're able in our own case, other contexts, able to measure student outcome and student status.
We can pull this exact same.
Okay, so we do have the potential capacity to use. It's not the state reported because it's not officially. From
This is the public facing
Understood.
information that you'll see when you go on to the PD's website.
I'm not asking. I know that would be its own own chunk of work, but I would say that it occurs to me, strategically speaking, it feels really hard to make strategic decisions when you have this number of years between the data points Whereas if you can have more either year to year or even better, can help us as a district understand what are we changing that is working and what are we changing that isn't working.
We pull that data out, maybe not specifically to the gap proficiency data, but each building does look at their own individualized data and look at the cohort for all the different categories of advanced proficient, number advanced and proficient percentage, as well as propensity based. So they do look at it from grade level to grade level, not cohort, and then of course cohorts, but not the gap proficiency.
So what this is translating means these are reasonable metrics for us to understand a current state, but not necessarily make decisions from these data points. However, fortunately, the people in our district who are making decisions are looking at more granular data.
Absolutely.
And that's good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought for the purposes of tonight, I would take something in the puzzle based so that you can see it as well.
Thank you. So, any other board questions on this data? We will take questions from the public. If anyone has a question in the room or online, please state your name and where you reside in the township, and we will take your question on these bills.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Schroeder. I fall into the Elkins Park Cheltenham Elementary School category. So I see that you're talking about the gap in proficiency rate between the general and the IEP per grade, but what about the gap amongst the different schools? Because according to a graph that we were given, I believe I was UPG, Cheltenham Elementary is a vast difference between them and Myers because one side of proficiency levels are about 40% in most categories, while the rest of the schools are around 60%. So I was just wondering, I can't fully see it because I can't be far away, but does it address that gap between the schools? But I see it per grade, but since the school is so different, Cheltenham Elementary has a vast difference. Does it address that at all?
Does this here? This does not, because this is coming off of the state reporting system. So this just does grade bands. This just does 4th, 8th, and 11th. To Director Schultz's point, that would be something internally that we would have to do. We'd have to break it down by each school and look at specifically the gap proficiency rate in each school.
That hasn't already been done.
The gap proficiency has not been done now.
Is that something that we can add to the agenda?
Thank you. Dr. Catrambone, can you, I don't know if it's possible to make your screen a little bigger to try to get the data a little, I don't know if it is or not. Ms. Schroeder, did you?
What do I do?
Yeah, that's just.
It's like click on the bottom.
Top right, there's a square.
So close to the X. I don't want to.
Yeah, don't hit the X.
I'm not doing that. What am I doing?
There's a square right next to the X. There's
Yeah,
a
but
square.
that's not controlled.
He's sharing his screen, so
Oh,
I think
wait.
it's on this screen.
Oh.
It's different, yeah. You have to.
You have two things going on right now.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Wish me luck.
All right.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Ms. Schroeder has a follow-up, Dr. Catrambone.
Yep.
Is there like a rough deadline you can give me for when that's going to be consumed?
I'll have to reach out to you because I want to know specifically what you're asking, because this is gap proficiency data. All this is going to show us is the gap proficiency between students with IEPs and students and the PSSA data overall. So
I think parents would be interested to know about the gap proficiency that you're speaking to, the IEPs and in general per school, not just per grade, because there is such a vast difference between.
Okay. I'll reach out to you and you can put it in. Yeah.
What Ms. Schroeder is referring to was actually a document that was put together by UPG that looked at the future ready index data that is available per school on the state's website. And that data is different than this data because this data is speaking specifically to special education pen data, which is a different collection mechanism. For the future ready index data, Ms. Schroeder, we can certainly go through that website and disaggregate it. The disaggregation is already available on the futurereadypa.gov site, but we certainly can assist you in terms of walking you through the site and using the site, because honestly, that data is publicly available at this point.
On the site, it goes over the general proficiency and IEP proficiency.
Yeah, there's a way to disaggregate that, but we can connect offline and set up an appointment so that I can show you how to use it.
Okay.
We can do that for
Thank you.
We would have to calculate that.
Thank you. I don't see any hands, Mr. Epps. Question?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. So in a lot of these areas, right, with the state targets and rates, we're fairly close in most of these areas, like we're close. So like in some ways we get an assessment of okay, but as I look through these, don't really know what to make of it. And so I know we've had a lot of board questions and concerns sometimes when it comes to how the state sets its targets for proficiency and even as you look at different ethnicities and so and ability as well. So I wanted to get my gut sense is like a lot of those things still aren't really accepted. And so I wanted to get a sense from the administration, just because it's a snapshot. So like when you all look at this, like what's the sense that you all are, I know we're getting not to get too far in the programming, but when you get this data, like what's the like traffic light assessment that you all get as you look at this?
I think initially, first and foremost, for me and my department, we get a sense of where we need to be in allowing all students access to Tier 1 interventions and Tier 1 instruction. So all students should have access to that, because even though, unfortunately, if they're not reading on grade level, for example, they're still going to be taking this PSSA, this public-facing test, and it's going to be public-facing in terms of the results, and really, really challenging our students, really bringing them up, because they can do. And I think that the more that we expose them to the Gen Ed and hold them accountable for some of this information, that's where we want to see that gap close. And I remember you had asked specifically last time about breaking down for race and ethnicity, and I thought about that. If I added all that, it'd probably be here a while.
Yeah.
But I promise you, I didn't forget, because breaking out some of the, I have one slide on Swiss discipline data at the end, and will lead us down to breaking it down, that I plan to have for you once the school year ends, and I can put it all in a document for you, hopefully have it for you sometime by the end of June. But you'll see that slide. It's on that.
Okay, Ms. Loman.
I just plus one to that. I mean, even if our gap is 29.2 and it will only increase by 0.5 to 29.7. And the state rate is 22. Yeah, it's still speaks kind of volumes to not only what we expect from our kids with disabilities, but what the state expects as acceptable disabilities. And I'm actually speechless. I realize I live with a kid who just graduated from college with significant learning disabilities. And I know that it is possible to program for kids to be successful. And the vast majority of our kids, even though we have a growing number of kids with autism, the vast majority of our kids have learning disabilities or speech language. And I know we're getting a special education audit, and I'm very appreciative of that, because I just can't. I just am really flummoxed, I guess, about the numbers, and really, again, like I said, what the state thinks as an acceptable gap.
Well, I share those sentiments. I mean, we don't strive to close the gap. We want to see the state, as you said, as you pointed out. And I think they probably give that leeway for the very reason they know they're presenting students with test material where they're still a little bit behind, and you can achieve that on their own in that snapshot of a moment, because that's what this is. This is a snapshot of a test they take over a 2-week period.
Yeah, I know the PSSAs there's all kinds of issues with them. I fully appreciate that. It's fortunately it's that.
I know Dr. Savage is on the line, but just to plus one what you're saying, I'm going to quote say her catchphrase, rigor is love, and you know that to be true. And having served on the board for 8 years, and the idea of opportunity gaps and racial opportunity gaps, which are often very largely driven by literally these, because we know racial disparities in IEP identification and just one other voice around here saying, I recognize again, these are not numbers that we're making strategic decisions from because they are not granular enough for you to know what is being effective and ineffective in addressing those gaps. I'm glad we're measuring them. The goals listed by the state, I always look at and say that can't be our. And so appreciate that. I think there's fairly much consensus about these kinds of sentences.
100% agree. That's why when we started our work about 3 years ago with developing that framework, we started with the mindset that all students have access to everything that all students have access to before we went into understanding what the interventions are. That's come along with this too.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any other hands? So, thank you, Dr. Catrambone. We can move.
We're gonna shift up data a little bit, and I'm gonna Dr. Beasley and Shannon up here so that you can you come up there.
Sit here.
It's easier to hear your voice on the microphone.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to give you background while they're coming up,
You can stay, don't
Dr.
stay there.
Dr. Brown Beasley has been with the district for a long time. She is an amazing board certified behavior analyst. She is also our PaTTAN Autism Initiative internal coach, along with Shannon Kelly-McNally, who came to us a little over a year ago. And the teacher liaison on assignment that works on our low incidence classes across the elementary buildings. And as I think you all know, when I got here, we had 5 autistic support programs. We now have 7 plus life skills. We'll be growing that actually to 2 more next year, just because, as you said, the need was there.
2 more autism support.
2 more autism support lessons, because our kids are matriculating up and we have more coming in. And then also Shannon's role will be increasing, which they'll share here all the way up to 8th grade. But wanted to give you a little bit of background on the PaTTAN Autism Initiative. I'll turn it over to my 18.
All right. Through the support arm of PaTTAN, Pennsylvania Tech Training and Technical Assistant Network, we are part of the PaTTAN Autism Initiative, where our elementary schools, our elementary autistic support classrooms receive hands-on training, in-class modeling, ongoing support for our paraprofessionals, related service providers, our teachers, to strengthen effective practices, ensuring that we're using quality indicators to support our students with autism in those autistic support elementary school classrooms. This is year 3 for us as being part of the initiative. The district took back in terms of operating their own autistic support classrooms 4 years ago. So this is 3 years in the initiative.
And then our role, what Dr. Beasley and I do is supporting currently those 7 autistic support classrooms across the elementary school buildings. It's in all 4. We provide coaching and instructional support to all of those teachers. And I know for myself, typically it's twice weekly. I may do half day here and there. We're at Lincoat, there's 3 classrooms, so I tend to spend 1 full day there to provide support to those teachers. We also do professional development and capacity building, not only for teachers, but also for the paraeducators as well. It's such a vital component to us being able to run the program effectively. We can, in supporting teachers, but also ourselves, if time needs us to also be able to do those things, support with assessments, making program decisions with teachers and the IEP teams, because ultimately the IEP teams are the ones who are making those decisions for students, but we are there to support them in making those choices for any kind of programming, whether it's adding IEP goals, any of those good things, as well as curriculum support. On top of the VB program, we also want to make sure our students who have the skill set to access research-based ELA and math programs, because they should also have that part of their daily school learning as well. Ultimately, the goal would then develop those skills in those AS classrooms, providing them meaningful inclusion in the general education setting. And then just through our role as the conduit between the PaTTAN initiative, our PaTTAN consultants from the initiative, and then through teachers, we just are there to collaborate, coordinate, and to continue to advocate for the students, because ultimately that's what our main goal is.
So celebrating our wins, we're really proud of the work that we've all been able to accomplish as a team. So our TAI consultants are supporting classrooms and teachers across all 7 of our autistic support classrooms. The initiative was initially it was isolated in specific classrooms. Now all 7 of our autistic support classrooms are getting that hands-on coaching and modeling and support from Ms. McNally and myself. 6 paraprofessionals have been able to participate in a camp, which is a 3-day training on verbal behavior, intensive teaching, just to build their capacity. So not just the teachers, but also building our paraprofessional staff. Ongoing coaching from myself on a monthly basis with our speech therapists, collaborating with them and supporting them in this initiative. Our elementary AS classrooms are all using the verbal behavior approach, which is evidence-based strategy to promote functional communication for our students who have a deficit in that area. Just some additional flows, we're collaborating with some of our local partners, Westchester School District. Some of our teachers and Ms. McNally and myself were able to go out and see what they're doing. They've been part of the initiative, I think, for over 15 years, just to see what's working in their district so we can take some of that back to our district. We have quarterly meetings held with each elementary level AS classroom with our supervisors and Dr. Cat. Weekly internal coaching for our AS staff from the 2 of us. My focus is more behavioral or behavior, ensuring, using the principles of behavior to promote language and communication, as well as using some of those components for behavior management, social emotional learning, and Ms. McNally, an instructional focus in terms of the academics and those areas as well. We also are part of the Train the Trainer series, which the PaTTAN provides to continue to build our capacity as coaches, so we continue to scale our program and generalize some of their strategies across our district and buildings.
For us, we are always celebrating the wins, but we also want to keep moving things forward. So oftentimes we have like a running list of things that we want to make better next school year. That was something I did as a teacher, and I think it's important to continue doing even in this role. So some of our goals looking towards next school year are more paraeducator participation in that 3-day boot camp. We want to get them trained so they are then boots on the ground, able to support teachers in those classrooms, whether students are cycling through centers or teachers have the paraeducators maybe at a table and they're practicing and reviewing any of their intensive teaching targets that they've mastered. Additional push and support from our related service providers. So that could be your speech or your OT, pushing into those classrooms. So not only is the teacher able to have on the grounds consultation, it's also to provide turnaround training for those paraeducators. A lot of our students in this program are utilizing AAC devices, and that's not something that we all naturally know how to use in a functional way, especially when you're doing instruction. So having those services put in those classrooms is vital. But then it also allows our students to generalize skills. That it's just not isolated to speech and language or an OT session, that this is something I can use in any school environment. We want to make sure that all students are having a completed fall and spring verbal behavior assessment. So as students either are first coming in as an EI student or maybe coming in from Philadelphia recently, just got a student coming in and is now at Glenside. We need to make sure that we're reassessing them in the fall and then reassessing them in the spring to see where were those gaps closed and where are those areas that are still persistent that we need to really focus programming. We also want to continue to foster stronger partnerships and ongoing communication with parents. I know one of our goals is to send a monthly newsletter to parents, kind of going over aspects of the program so that they understand. It's a lot of language is vastly different, but then also how they can utilize something that we're teaching them in school and how it can look at home. So they can then also work with their children at home, practicing those same skills. So repetition is so important. We want all elementary classrooms to have a schedule developed to allow for more meaningful learning opportunities. And that's where those trained paraeducators become so important, because they're part of that rotation, they're part of that schedule. As Dr. Cat and Dr. Beasley had mentioned, the low-wing program supports are going to expand from K-5 to K-8. We want to establish PLCs for all staff, AS staff, to be able to have time to collaborate with paraeducators. Often it's on the fly, maybe first thing in the morning, but their ability to communicate and collaborate together is so important for how the routines and the structures. We also want to develop an internal fidelity procedures checklist for our teachers. So this can include those aspects of the VE program and timelines that we want teachers to have access to, but then also those important SPED timelines, particularly child count that comes in December 1st or ESY or when progress reporting is coming up. It's just another resource for teachers to help them just become more organized themselves.
We just wanted to take a quick moment to just have a student spotlight. So this was a specific student who entered Shongham School District in the fall of 2020 as a 2022 as a first grade student. He was previously a part of the MCIU's run autistic support classroom. So at the time, he received all formal instruction in special education for 20% of his day. Was spent in the general education setting. The student demonstrated significant needs in behavior and social emotional functioning, limited communication skills, and just generalized difficulty expressing himself once needs when he joined our program.
And now as a fourth grader and having spent the last 3 years of their programming receiving the verbal behavior support throughout their school day, they've been able to increase their inclusion with the general education setting from that 20% to 51% of their school day. That's our ultimate goal. We want all of our students to be included with their peers as much as they can and just become independent humans as they possibly can. That's our ultimate goal. They have enhanced social skills. Now the student is continuing to develop the ability to generalize their social skills, which again, especially as students become older, that social aspect becomes vitally important. And the student had a history of difficulty transitioning into and within the school, which is no longer an issue. And there's just that strengthening of communication skills. The student is increasing his ability to answer where and why questions and has progressed from limited functional communication.
Thank you. That's that section. All right, we'll do questions on that section then. Ms. Woodstein.
Thank you. Thank you for this portion of the presentation. I have two questions. One is, are our autistic support classrooms fully staffed? Is our program fully staffed at this time?
Yes, to my knowledge, and I know we have teachers, all certified teachers in there and paraeducators as well.
Awesome. And my other question is, how frequently is the boot camp off the year?
That's determined by
PaTTAN, but typically 2 times per year at the start of the year and typically in the spring.
We are lucky though, our internal coaches have offered to be able to, they can schedule time, maybe not a full day, but a half day. And that's something that we're really looking for, that we kind of requested, and we're trying to work out that first week when teachers come back, that if we can have some time with those individuals and as well as our internal faculty.
Because the goal is we want to build internal capacity where we are, they're relying on our skills and expertise. So it's not just isolated to women PaTTAN coaches can provide the consultation. We want to make sure that we have that skill set, and we do, to generalize those skills across
our students. We want them to generalize skills. We also want us as adults to generalize them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Ms. Lemon?
Just so I understand the current configuration of autistic support, so the elementary schools, the 4 elementary schools, there's a total of 5 autistic? 7, okay. So does every school have 2?
That is no,
except for 1.
right now. It will, yeah.
Okay.
That is the goal for next year. Right now, 2 elementary schools have 2 and 2 have 1.
And then we can put that.
Winco.
I'm sorry, Winco.
All right, so yeah, 3 at Winco right now.
Yeah, 1 at Glenside, 2 at Myers, 1 at Chalkham Elementary.
Okay.
But then I believe the goal is for next year that Chalkham and Glenside will have a K-5 continuum, so you would have 2 classrooms. The current established classroom and then.
And then what do we do for artistic support for 6, 7, 8 and above?
Yeah.
Maybe classrooms, I'm sorry, what about the
They're learning too. I was like, we have AS classrooms and all.
That's what I thought, yeah, okay, so this was just
right
just
now for the
elementary.
PaTTAN Autism Initiative, yes.
Got it,
Yes.
okay.
The goal is to
Okay,
first start with the 6 to 8
foundational,
and
okay.
build some of that up. with some
got it,
additional.
okay. Got it.
Any other board reps?
More observations and questions. Appreciate the Glow Grow spotlight. And in addition, the glows are connected to the grows in some intentional ways, it seems like, especially with the verbal behavior. Like there's something happening
Yeah,
now
then we
to
want to
do more of it. And so
make it better.
Yeah,
To try to make it better, yes.
exactly. So appreciate those connections and the student spotlight. This is really a small thing that makes a big thing happen. I appreciate the gender neutral language, and so it seemed inconsistent. So so I appreciated the gender neutral language from the students, the consistency around that.
Any other board questions?
How many students do we have currently in elementary school receiving autistic support?
56.
Is it 56?
55.
I was gonna say it's between 55 or 60.
And I would say, Jackie, 6 to 12 is probably maybe not even half that at this point.
Or receiving
That's the students who are primary level support is autistic.
I can go back to the old slides that we had for, that's right.
My point is, it's growing.
Thank you. Can I ask, but thank you, that was great. Quick question about the PLCs that was like on the slide of like going forward. Is that starting? So these are PLCs for the autistic support classroom staff, right? And that does not exist formally now.
No, it does not, yes.
And that's K to 5.
Correct.
We're talking about.
Yes, for right now, yes. That's also just been also an ask from teachers and paraeducators,
Sure.
because they really do want that time. It is so,
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just gonna say, we had few moments this year on PD days where we did get them together. I'm not gonna mind, say we formally called it a PLC, but just getting them together to collaborate was just outstanding. So now we want to formalize it and structure it for them because.
And I mean, the goal is we're writing PLCs for all different kinds of kids, so this is no different than any other teachers. Any questions from the public in the room or online? Ms. Schroeder?
Hi, so you mentioned, you mentioned the, I think with PaTTAN.
Yeah.
Coaching. Okay, so how in-depth was the internal coaching? Because I know you had said that 6 paras did the 3-day training, and then was it required for the internal coaching, or was that something that was elected?
So we are the internal coaches, so we're out every week providing support, and we intentionally try not to be in the same building at the same time. So they're gonna get double in a week of getting that support from the internal coaches. Our PaTTAN consultants come out monthly, and they are state partners that provide, that give us fidelity checks to ensure we are meeting standards in terms of quality indicators of what good instruction looks like in an autistic support classroom, and that our environment meets standards, and they work with us as internal coaches to help build our capacity. So was that your?
The PaTTAN coaching, they internally coach you guys, that you can internally coach them.
Yes.
And when you guys, that's required? When you said you go out weekly, right?
Yes, to provide support to the
Teachers
teachers and
and
paraprofessionals and related service providers. So that could be speech, occupational therapists, and physical therapists when needed.
I think I'm asking, like, do all parents get that guidance from you guys at the schools?
That are part of the autistic support classroom.
Only adults?
Yes, because the initiative is just strictly for autistic support.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. And you mentioned that there's a student from Philly at Glenside. Do they currently live in Philly, or were they?
No, they just transferred in from Splitsville.
And then you said that another AS classroom is going to be added to the next year. I have a concern with that because we've been told by staff that there is no additional space at the school. So how is that going to be configured to make space for another class?
Well, we have to continue with the students we have in the program, and then we have about 3 or 4 early intervention students that are coming in.
I can also confirm for Cheltenham Elementary School, there's going to be a reduction in the number of 5th grade sections. They are moving from 5 sections of 5th grade to 4. So that will actually free up a classroom for the additional autistic support room. So though the staff may have shared that information with you, I am a little reticent because sometimes our staff is sharing information that is speculative or inaccurate because they have not necessarily been brought up to speed on the planning. We are still in the process of planning where the classrooms will go for next year because obviously we are waiting for all of our kindergarten and early intervention students to register.
Thank you, Ms. Savage.
I think it's just the last one. So because there's been, I'm sure a lot of you are aware, a high number of incidents occurring at Cheltenham Elementary, I'm sure at other schools as well. So is there any concern about adding another, I guess, high needs classroom into a school that like is there between emotional support and autistic support? Is there any collaboration between figuring out systems and how this is going to go? I don't know how to eloquently put it, but just
absolutely. I've actually been on staff, not in the past, I'd say 2 days, but over at Cheltenham Elementary, I had been there pretty much on and off for the prior 2 weeks, and Dr. Cat had been there for the prior 3 weeks. And we have been having conversations with the staff and actually doing activities and professional learning with them to suss out what their needs are, as well as what systems they would like to see put in place and what training that not only they think they need, but also the training needs that we have been able to discern from our observations of the building. And I would like to just remind the public in general that all children that live in the district are entitled to education in their neighborhood schools. So barring us not having any availability for that programming in a particular school, students are entitled to go to the schools that they are entitled to go to based upon their address. What we have been doing is making sure that the programs are in place as well as the resources and the staff. And we have been sussing out where we have personnel issues that need to be remediated and training people appropriately so that they can serve the children of the district in the best way possible.
Thank you, Ms. Babbage.
I'm Kathy Sampson. I live in Ashburn, Gale, and Shelton Elementary. My children are already past elementary school, but I have been aware of many of the things that have been going on in Girman. I've been super concerned, new neighbors, and things like that. And I was talking about, is this true for the two designated emotional support classrooms that are at Cheltenham Elementary School? Like all of these, is it separate? You're talking about autism, like
we're just talking about the time notches. It's just for our low income includes our LSS classroom at Glenside, but then also the autistic support classrooms. But this particular program is just for our autistic support classrooms.
Right here has nothing.
No, it does not. No.
That those emotional support
classrooms.
This section of the presentation, it is a special ed portion of the presentation, but this particular part was just about the PaTTAN initiative with the autistic support.
So that, okay. That makes a little bit of sense.
Yes. So I would ask that for now, if we could keep questions on the topic at hand, and then at the end, if there is time to take general educational affairs questions, and we'll be, some of us, I'm sure, will be here to answer questions. We want to make sure your questions are answered.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Yeah, no, there's a lot of topics, a lot of little topics that we're kind of all sandwiching. All right.
At the end of the special education topic, we'll go over this question.
At the very end of the entire presentation, as time allows, we will try to take some other general education affairs related.
Well, like pertaining to special ed.
Well, special ed is part of education.
I can't say.
Right now, we need to stay on the presentation because we still have several more parts of this presentation that we need to get to specifically before we get to non-agenda questions.
Special ed is on policy. Our questions are part of the special ed.
Right, but right now what we're discussing, right now what we're discussing is that particular part of special education, which was the autistic support classrooms and the PaTTAN initiative.
No, I understand that, but I was saying, because I know there's different topics for the next meeting, I was saying
at the end of the entire meeting, once we have covered all of the topics that are part of tonight's agenda, then we can take questions that are about non-agenda items.
Was it non-agenda though, if we're asking questions about the topic that was on the agenda?
Because the topic that we're discussing right now is the autistic support PaTTAN initiative. That's what we're discussing. I want to make sure the questions get answered, but we do have a number of administrators here and slides we need to get to with items that we need to hear about before we can do things that are not. So I appreciate your patience. And if we don't get to it tonight, then we can talk afterwards or after the meeting. Next slide. Unless there's any other questions on this, I don't see any hands on. Thank you.
So a couple of years ago, when we brought in specific intervention programs such as iReady, those of you that remember graciously all the materials that we're going to have systemized go-to for our special ed, so track data. We now are almost at the end of year 2. So year 1, 2023, 24 was our committee, our framework, our building the handbooks and everything. Last year was the initial implementation of these programs and interventions. And now we're almost finished year 2. So in February, we talked about it. Instead of reporting out data at that point in time, I asked if we could do it in May when we had more data to produce. So I have Jackie and Ashley to present on. These are the programs that we use, and I'll just turn to Jackie.
Can I pause actually for real quick? I'm gonna stole my thunder because I was gonna talk about implementation. I was already talking about implementation science because I did a little wanting to kind of bring back. Mr. Schultz had pointed out that he's been here for 8 years, but there's a couple faces that have not, right? Our faces change constantly. So I want to kind of bring you back through the history of what was happening because there were different people at the table at the time. So with implementation science, right, there's the stages of exploration, installation, initial implementation, full implementation, and sustainability. So I would say that during the 23-24 school year, that's when we did that exploration stage. We did the pilots. Our supervisors helped gather data. We had classrooms that utilized the programs. We collected information from admin. We collected information from students. We looked at actual data to help us decide what programs are we moving ahead with, which is then where we went with these programs that you see on the board. Then last school year, 24-25, I would say was the installation stage. So that's when we began the PD process for identifying for the identified programs, so staff could understand how they worked. They could practice them in their classrooms. They could ask questions, and then based on an offered a series of PDs, use of the programs really began to take leeway about halfway through the year, right? That's kind of how that timeline looked last year, because once again we had to get the PD out for people to understand the programs they were utilizing. So that then brings us to this school year, which what I would argue is the initial implementation. Because at the beginning of this year, all staff had access to these programs. They had access to trainings. We rolled out the programs to all the necessary classes. We set up integration between our SIS system and our programs so that they could roster automatically. So as students were moved from classrooms for maybe different classes for some reason, they'd still be able to be rostered into the programs and utilize them. And then during this year, we've been continuing to offer professional development. And then we were problem solving when issues came up. So I would say in the overall process of those 5 stages, we were at stage 3 now, with the goal of next year being full implementation. And with that, we're going to review during our little portions of talking about the programs, like our goals for the upcoming year, so we can improve in the use. I'm not going to about to put some shine light and say that we're about to show you the perfect data. That's never how it works in implementation, but the goal is always improvement to get to sustainability. So you can go to the next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the programs that are used up at the high school. Success Maker was the program utilized for math to support math needs. If you could take a look, the usage from 24-25 to 25-26, you'll see this is average weekly minute use. The goal for the program is to use it between 40 and 60 minutes. We're not there yet, right? But we are making progress in a lot of areas. I will say that, of course, you're looking at going back to that initial information Dr. Catrambone was showing, we're looking at different cohorts of kids, right? So 9th graders from that year, but then be 10th graders for this year. And then also Success Maker starts at 9th grade. So our 8th graders going into 9th grade don't know the program they're about to be utilizing now. So, right, that also takes some build up to when it comes to use. When we're looking at learning gains for the program, our 9th graders showed from when I pulled this data, it was beginning of May. So from after they started with their diagnostic, because a lot of our programs start with the diagnostic, which level 10. And I'll show you an example next about a specific student example, but they get leveled with the diagnostic. The programs also offer the ability to move students and to put them into let's call them separate classrooms to be able to utilize the program for the specific skills we need them to target, which a lot of the times their seminar or teacher will do. So the 9th graders showed a 0.13 increase, 10th graders 0.06, 11th graders 0.07, and then our 12th graders showed the largest growth at 0.18. I have one more thing about Success Maker, right? Yeah, if you go to the next slide.
Go to the next slide.
So I'm going to use an example, student exemplar.
Sorry. It's just, I just wanted to know, is that 0.13 what?
Grade equivalency.
Grade, so
Yes.
it's a little over 10% of a grade level.
Yes.
That the 9th graders, okay.
Yep.
And what would be expected?
So ultimately, the goal is to be about 1 grade level growth in a year when you use the program for the full extent of time that it is meant to. Obviously, there's some things we have to take into account, right? Number of kids rostered because the programs are aligned to certain classes. Time of year, so when I looked at usage in December, when the kids are about to go to Christmas break, promise you the usage went down. Same with in January when they're getting ready for finals and keystones, the usage went down because I can't control it. They do need to prepare for all of those other things. So that's why usage also fluctuates if you were to look at it almost in a granular, week by week way, or course by course, you'll see that fluctuation because of things like that.
Your one intervention, where does the success maker fall in terms of?
So I guess it'd be tiered, so it's only used with special education. So yeah, so I guess tier
It'd be
three.
tier 3 intervention because it'd be directly related to whatever goal and IEP.
Got it.
And that's the instrument or intervention that we're using to measure the success of that specific goal.
Okay, and my next question is what would be an ideal average weekly minutes count?
So ideally it should be 40 to 60. So you're looking at about a 20-minute usage each time, and the students would be utilizing this program somewhere between 2 to 3 times a week. They're utilized in our learning support classes, our cores, so like our learning support algebra 1, but they're also used in like our math seminar class, which it doesn't meet every day. So, but in average, the goal when we went forward with this program, when Ms. Kugler met with the team at Savvis, the goal was that 40 to 60 minutes. So I know we're not there. I would just be very blunt saying I know we're not there, but the goal is that we are making increases towards that direction. And once again, this average is an overall average, so it doesn't specifically hash out those weeks where they're going to be off. They're not utilizing the first week of school because first week of school is like SEL lessons, PBA, team builders, all those things. And there's also other assessment things that go on throughout the year in the assessment calendar that then impact the use of the program.
Thank you. The teachers, what do they do with this information? Do they then tailor their lessons towards where the student is having struggles, or what with this?
So, like I said, the program has a diagnostic where it levels kids in places, but the teachers have the ability to specifically assign skills to students. So most of the time they will assign a student because, like we said, this is goal-based instruction. So whatever their goal is, there are skill sets or splinter skills around that goal that's what the teacher will be assigning. This is like one part of, good teaching that goes into teachers are running small groups to teach things in that traditional format. This is another part of the intervention, same with they'll get whole group things. So it kind of like it blends in because completely computer is never perfect, nor is ignoring technology.
So, like, how long, this is individualized, so you can't really answer this question. But like, how long do kids tend to, in the high school, do they receive support in the learning support classroom? I'm just sort of trying to understand how long they're on a computer while they're in the learning support classroom, vis-a-vis like other time spent doing other things in the learning support classroom.
So a typical block is about 80 minutes at the high school. Our core classes are every day. Well, I don't even say that, but most of the time our core classes are every day for one semester. There are a couple that are a caveat to that, like our number concepts class and our pre-algebra class are every other day. Because those are kids who are still working on very foundational skills. Our seminar classes are every other day, still that 80 minutes. And they're typically either half year or all year, depending on the student. So. Okay. So out of the 80 minutes, 20 minutes would be less than a third of that time, right? So it's a fourth of that time would be technology based in the ideal
for 3 twice.
2 to 3 times a week. Yep.
But they could also be doing like ready or.
Well, so the high school doesn't use that, right? It only goes to 8th grade. But yeah, it could be a group of kids are using Success Maker while a group of kids are working with the teacher while a group of kids are doing craft monitoring, right? There could be a whole gamut of things going on in the room. There is no rule that says you have to do it this way. And I think this year, teachers have really gotten the opportunity to explore how it works best in their class, which I would say also adds into the data not being exactly where it needs to be, because this is the first year full implementation, so or initial implementation. So I definitely think some have been, exploring on how does this fit in, how does this work with my teaching.
I realize this isn't a statistical analysis, but it's hard to miss the correlation between 9th grade time and outcome, 10th grade time and outcome, 11th grade time and outcome, and 12th grade time and outcome. Like that feels like a pretty compelling story for this tool being effective.
Absolutely.
The other story I'm seeing in this slide is the jump from 12th grade from 20 minutes to 35.6 minutes over 1 year. That piques my interest. What happened to have that level of success? Like, what were the changes in 12th grade specifically? and I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know, I can't give a direct
That is
answer, I
like-
could.
Those are the two things that jumped out at me.
Yeah, and I can look at it and that would be my argument of why I think your investment or us as a district and a community's investment in these programs, I'll stand by these, right? I'm not gonna stand by something I don't believe in. I'll stand by these because the correlation is there, right? So it's not causation, the correlation is there, right? If I'm seeing that more time spent shows more growth, we just gotta use it for, right? And that's something that this same data is gonna be shown to our teachers as well, so they understand the why the relevance. I need to understand the why to have the buy-in, and I think that's what shows here. And then when we do the next slide to show a student sample, you'll see that, because I also want to kind of like piggyback on the conversations earlier about PSSAs, right? Just like with this, when the students take their diagnostic, a diagnostic cannot be the sole data interpreter of a child, because I will say, if I sit me in front of an SAT right now, I'm not doing well, right? And it's because I can't do well in a standardized test that's timed with high stressors and all of that stuff. So that's where, for me, with special ed, kind of why I like Act 158 having other pathways, is because not everyone can be a test taker. And that's not fair, because how many of you sit in your jobs and take a test every day? You don't. And so I believe here it's like not every kid's going to do well in the diagnostic, but that's why I love that the programs give you the ability to then place a kid in a sub-skill. And so can you flip to the next screen show? So our student in this example, you'll see that they had got assigned 8th grade. That's what that 8.00 is. And they're currently at the 8.29. That's pretty much the importance. Their gain is being from their IP. So the IP is actually where their initial placement, IP stands for initial placement. They grew 0.19. So that's 0.19 of the grade level equivalency. You'll see on the right side, the exercises, which are the assignments that they're assigned. This student got 235 correct, was assigned 525. So AKA got 45% of it correct. Not perfect, right? These are skills that students don't have yet, right? That's why they're practicing. So I'm not expecting that to ever be 100 particularly, but this student's average session was 13 minutes, but overall was 11 hours and 45 minutes. So this student, from the data that you see from the program, I then went, let me look at their IEP. They were a student whose last year IEP was at a 6th grade level for a math application goal, and then this year's IEP in 8th grade. So that shows a 2-year growth in the IEP goal, right? So that's why I don't like to hang my hat on one data point, because of the fact that there is this way to see other things. We have really fine-tuned our progress monitoring to utilizing standard aligned tools to measure. So we are actually seeing kids growth in true standard aligned, questions and topics. So that was something that I just wanted to show as a spotlight, is that as the students are utilizing in the program more, we are seeing more growth correlate into their IEPs, and ultimately as well into ideally their class grades and their access to inclusion. Because like I said, we do use the program in both our core classes, which are more restrictive environments, as well as our seminars, which are less restrictive environments. So that was Success Maker. Do we want to pause for any more Success Maker questions before?
Success Maker
Move on
questions.
to Islet.
Any Success Maker questions from the public? I don't see any hands, so we can move on. Thank you.
So the program that we utilize for reading at the high school level is ILET 20. If you notice in the data, our enrollment from 24-25 to 25-26 went from 105 to 188. So once again, enrollment I wouldn't always say is the only indicator, because number of kids with that goal and in those classes is going to change. So a kid could master a reading goal one year, which means that they wouldn't be enrolled in the program the next year. But overall, when you look, our completion of our IRs, which are independent readers, that is the assignment with this program. We had 329 completed last year, but we're now at 646 this year. So we were an increase of 96%. We were also, for the completed assignments, so IRs are independent readers, and then you have assignments as well. We were also up 110% on those that have been completed. Our overall growth for reading has been a 0.46, so 0.46 grade equivalency. Our Lexile growth has been 104.18. And then same with our average usage. Our average usage also has increased across. And so I pulled 3 weeks from last year to 3 weeks from this year to compare the data of the usage. And so that's the growth you see there.
What is Lexile growth?
So Lexile is another yeah, I was gonna say, it's another indicator of reading levels. I keep trying to explain it, because instead of me saying you're on a 3rd grade reading level, you can have a Lexile that spans 250 points. So it's a really hard indicator to go you definitely fall here, because a 4th grade reader could be between 200 to 350, 200 to 450. It's such a big gap. So it is just another indicator of reading levels. Can't remember where program it came from. It came from a very specific program.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Yeah, they just look at it from both lenses because depending on the program you use, once again, different programs will measure a kid in different ways. So if you've ever heard of the program like Read 180 that we utilize in some of our classes, they measure lifestyle. Same with the QRI, they also measure lifestyle.
Thank you. Ms. Bowman?
Is pilot 20 assessing for reading comprehension? But what exactly are we, what is it?
So it offers different components to it. So there is a writing component, there is reading comprehension component. I believe there is a fluency component, but a student doesn't do that like independently. That would be something they do with the teacher. But on that more independent level, they get these readers and these assignments, and it is really more so focused on like analysis and comprehension. And then there is that writing component, which I do really like about it because I know we don't always target writing in such a specific way, and this program really helps with that. And then the program has the ability to turn on automatic grading and manual grading, which more of our teachers do the manual grading, which I kind of like because computers are going to pull only so much and look at different things. And so they do have the option for either or. There isn't like a specific you have to do it this way. But yeah, so
this wouldn't necessarily be something that we would with an older student try to still be similar to academic awareness or something.
Nope, yeah, this is not a phonics program.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Any other eyelet one? Well, let's do the spotlight and then we'll see.
Student spotlight. So this student had started at the beginning of the year. So this program has some more diagnostics built into its timeline. So they started at the beginning of the year with a 2.6 grade level. They're in the midpoint of the year, got a 7.7. Once again, usage over the last 4 weeks, 20.29 on average, a total usage of 90 hours, 41 minutes. Initial reading, and so once again, this could be a kid who's in the class all year long. So it's kind of keeping that in mind too, that not every student takes the class all year long to be in the program. Initial readers started at 1.3 level up to 3.1, so a growth of 1.8. Lexile started at 150, is up to 940. Once again, could I say the program did all that? Maybe not. If they didn't take the first test seriously, then that might just be where they landed. But I will say the later ones, they might have also built the buy-in. Right now, I've done this program for so long. Now I understand why it's great and it's important. Now let me take it more seriously. Especially since, I'll be honest, the motivation of not being in special ed, I see at the secondary level a lot. I don't want to be in special education. I don't want to receive special education. I'll say be in, but I don't want to receive special education. So for some students, that motivation really pushes the attempts that they make and like the effort they put forward. So I would argue that this student put a lot more effort into that mid-year point because we saw 790 growth, which is not always typical for a 4-month period, but I mean, could be. They did 95% of their assignments, which shows the more they did the work, the more growth you're going to see. And those averages are just from different scores from the program. But this student, same deal. I looked at their 24-25 reading comprehension goal, and they were at a 6th grade level. And then in 25-26, they were at an 8th grade level. So we saw a 2-year growth in their goal and their IEPs.
Eyelet 24 questions. Room. I don't see. Thank you.
And so my last part about this section is, once again, looking at next year, the goal is full in that implementation science, full implementation. I'm a believer in everyone's got to have buy-in, right? And so if that means me as a leader, I need to take responsibility and ownership into this as well. That's how I'm going to get my teachers to own in, which is how I'm going to get the students to own in. So I kind of put some goals as well as like the roles and responsibilities of people under those goals. So obviously increase average use. So that's like the big goal that we have across both programs, right? And so me as a supervisor, I'm going to send a reminder right at the beginning of the year, like this is your expectation, right? Because I think it sometimes just needs to be reminded that this is the expectation. This is not just what we're trying out and doing. That was kind of the attitude 2 years ago when we were initially implementing. But now we're at the point of like, this is what you guys are utilizing because it's showing to work. Also running monthly reports to check on usage, because I'll be honest, right now I was not doing monthly reports, but I think getting to that point of monthly helps me remind teachers, hey, you're not meeting where the bar is supposed to be, as well as looping in their administrators, because I think another part is really having building administrators understand the program so they can do walkthroughs and look for the use of them. Because ultimately, when I walk in the room, special education is one of the hardest areas to do walkthroughs and evaluations on because it's different. You're not going to walk in and see the exact same thing. Good teaching is good teaching, but special ed does look different. So making sure they know what those programs are so the administrators can walk in and see what they should be looking for. Providing additional professional development. So that came as part of the package when we initially paid for all this stuff, and we've been utilizing sessions. We still have, I believe, 2 left overall, one for each program, like day. And so filling that in and making sure we're targeting it towards where the need is. So really asking the teachers, like, what else do you need versus a more generalized, here is the typical sequence of professional development for a program. And then providing families of students who utilize the program additional information so they could support use at home. There's nothing about this program that says you can't go home and do it. And so it's similar to a lot of our intervention programs. Read 180 was that way, a bunch of them where it's like, you can go home and do this stuff too. And I'm not trying to give everyone homework, right? That is not the agenda point here. It is the fact that growth requires continuation of practice and skill. And so going home for 2 months during the summer, we see the summer slide, right? Even going home for the weekend for our kids who end up qualifying for ESY, that is enough time to drop. They can continue to practice this at home. They can go home this summer and utilize the program, right? It doesn't require you to be in the building. And I think the more knowledge parents have, the more likely they can also support their students, because I'm not asking you to teach your students. I'm asking you to encourage your student to jump on a program and utilize, because I recognize not everyone is a teacher. But like I said, it helps that continuation and that communication. And I've also sat in IP meetings before where I have teachers who are very fluid in explaining the programs. And I think that also helps the family buy into that this is not just another thing to do. It is something that's going to actually help you. As the most perfect. So
Question. Just another shout out for, I think, really enjoying those student spotlights to kind of see, you know, just an example of what can happen in any of the programs that we saw. So thank you for that. Mr. Schultz.
Just also a shout out to, I am very used to seeing numbers that are not consistently pointing in the right direction. It is really great to see a tool that is effective being implemented effectively, being reflected on, and you know, you mentioned the 4 or 5 step process, and we're on stage 3. I'm just very excited to see the continued investment. It's like all of the work.
Yeah.
Just for Claire, I think in the exploration phase, there's some qualitative data tracks. And I know we're looking at usage, so that's
different. Yeah.
Some side of are we still collecting some of that qualitative? Like, what are they saying about the programs, or is that more of a pilot phase?
Yeah, I mean, we're not formally putting it like the last time we did it as a survey to students and to teachers on it, but we do hear them out. Special teachers are very good at sharing their opinions, so they very much will tell us when things are not going well or when they don't understand something. So I do feel like, in a general sense, I'm hearing positive. And like I said, I think in that improving for next year's stage, it is this year has been a lot of testing of how to work it in their classroom, because I think they're just used to not having something. So before 2 years ago, I don't really know what was really happening in those math seminar classes. Teachers were just trying to teach. Now it's like, I'm giving you a tool, and I think trying to fit the tool into what they're used to takes change. Like, change takes work, and it's not something instantaneous. So I think that nobody's come to me to say that they hate the program completely, but I think some are just struggling on figuring out how do I get that 20 minutes to fit in meaningfully and not be choppy and breaking up my lesson, right? And that's the thing that the goal is that could be the next professional development offer, is how does this fit into a lesson, a typical 80-minute lesson that you're offering students. So.
Yeah, all right. Now,
So next up we have iWriting.
Faith that those are letters and numbers.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So I will do my best to just give a summary of each slide now that I have it on my screen. So first I'll give an overview of iWriting itself. So there's multiple programs within iWriting. One is, although we don't utilize it through the 9th to 12th, but phonics for reading goes from 3 to 12, and it's more for students who are demonstrating severe deficits when it comes to phonemic awareness, and that's targeting that specific skill set. And then you have, I'll go to K-8 math and K-8 reading. Both are grounded in more of the Common Core standards. And so ensuring that our students are receiving access to those Common Core standards within, whether it's a learning support setting, or if they're pulled for elementary when, or for a seminar block or at CDK. And then you have magnetic reading, which has foundations, which is K through 2. Again, that's more of the phonemic awareness, the foundational skills for reading. And you have magnetic reading comprehension for 5. So that's specifically for reading comprehension.
If there's students that are demonstrating skill deficits as it relates to phonemic awareness at 5 level, that's when they're going into the phonics for reading. And that's the same for CBK East and CBK. In addition to this, there's a separate section of iWriting following their diagnostic, where it's individualized instruction that they're then implementing and utilizing within the platform itself. The diagnostic itself gives teachers a plethora of information of skill sets that students should work on, guiding them to specific lessons, guiding them with resources and what's called a teacher toolbox. iWriting is very encompassing of different skill sets and has a number of features within the platform itself that teachers are able to access. So I just wanted to share all of that because that's reflective of this data here. So when you look at CBK East, so again, to Jackie's point, this is something that we are encouraging increasing usage. So the time that you see here is in minutes, and that's year to date. So CBK, this is typically for math for all grades of CBK. It's about an average of 5 hours and 50 minutes for math, and for reading for 3 hours and 31 minutes. The actual circles itself, the pie chart, is demonstrating the mastery of a past lesson. So the darker color is 91% of students pass the lessons with 70% or 100%. And the lighter blue is 8% of students passing with 50 to 60%. And then there's the very light blue that you can sort of see, that's 1% of students pass between 0 to 40% of lessons. And then that's for reading, that's for math. When you go to reading, the pie chart is obviously different. So the darker color is 45% of students are passing 70 to 100% with 70 to 100% accuracy. The lighter blue is 21% of students are passing with 50 to 69, thank you, percent accuracy. And then 34% of students are passing with a 0 to 45% passage rate. So it's a matter of going back and reteaching, ensuring students aren't moving on to the next lesson, so they demonstrated that mastery. Above that bar there, it says all students, but then it has 72 and 25. This is different and specific for students above grade 6. So if you have a student that is what's called essential lessons, that's in the middle. Those are students that are demonstrating skill deficits related to phonemic awareness. And so they're going to need additional foundational skills related to that. So those lessons are specific to that skill set. And then 25 students for math, and then 75 students for reading. That's a student that is nearing grade level. And so the program itself will adapt to help support students access that grade level content. But again, that's specific to 6th grade. When we get to the elementary schools, you will not see that available to them. CBK East, again, this is time for a task. And I also want to preface this in saying that this is the students accessing the platform. There's additional instruction and lessons that teachers may provide direct instruction on that is not encompassed within this number, but this is student accessing the platform. So for math, you have 4 hours and 41 minutes of time on task. 97% of their students are passed between 70 and 100% accuracy, and then 3% are between that 50 to 69%. And then for reading, it's 6 hours and 46 minutes on task. The darker color, which is the majority of the students, 65% are passed between 70 and 100%. The lighter blue is 19% of students are passing between 50 and 69%. And then the lightest blue is 16% of students are passing between 0 and 49%. And again, the same numbers at the top are similar based on the student usage. So again, essential lessons are those foundational skills that students need to access. And then what's called elevate lessons are students that are nearing grade level, and it accommodates and modifies the lesson to help them access that material. So next we have,
Really quick question.
It's repeated on every one of these slides. The average lesson time on task, the number that's in the rectangle there.
yes.
So say the 4 hours and 41 minutes, is that per week?
That's year to date. So ideally within the program, students should access and be on task for 30 to 45 minutes. So this is year to date based on minutes. So that's year to date 4 hours.
So 30 to 40 minutes per
Average.
30 to 40 minutes is the target for each student.
each day, weekly, okay,
Yes, yes.
okay. Weekly, okay.
And those numbers are year to date.
And by the way, I don't think we've met. I'm Jenny.
Nice to meet you, Ashley Pullum.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Ms. Yeah, let's do clarification, or, yeah, is it?
Well, just because honestly, I just really need to understand
Yeah.
what's the baseline of these percentages across all of these slides. You know, I'm seeing nearly 100% after the treatment. What would we have expected, or like what was the initial? Where are we moving from?
So that would be through the diagnostic, which we can obviously provide that data, but that isn't what's presented.
Understood.
Yeah.
And is it roughly like ballpark? Is it different for every?
Yes, the diagnostic is
Every
different for every student. So when you're sitting for the diagnostic, students are going through and completing it. Sometimes it will demonstrate the student rush for the task. Other times it will demonstrate whether or not there's been growth or regression within the student's performance. But the diagnostic itself will target specific skills. So whether that's phonics, whether that is, obviously depends on the grade level. But if we're talking about comprehension, it gives you both literary and informational text and where their skill deficits are. Do they need additional instruction on cause and effect? So it breaks down that specific for each student. And then when you go into, there's actually separate PDF on the upper right hand of the screen when you're looking at a diagnostic result that will give you the specific lessons that you can correct. And those are lessons that will be direct instruction, but then on addition to that, they have individualized, online platforms that they would then utilize, and that is what this is. So this is whether or not, how long they've utilized their own individualized instruction and it's specific to the student. So it moves based on the student's response to the work.
Okay.
So the more you're accessing it, the more that it's going to target skills that are needed, which you'll see as we get to the few other slides in addition to our students.
I think that's one.
Okay, I don't know, does that help with you?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So this is Myers Elementary. They have an average rate of 11 hours and 26 minutes. That's for math. And for reading, it's 11 hours and 32 minutes. And again, the pie charts are all the same. The darker color is 94% of students are passing with between 7 to 100%. And the lighter blue is 6% of students are between 50 and 69% passed. And then for reading, it's 75% of students are passing with 70 to 100% accuracy. The mid-color blue is 19% of students between 56 to 69%. And then the lightest color is 6% of students are passing between 0 to 40%. And so again, this is a skill set that we want to continue. One, teachers to encourage usage of, but that they're reassuring and going back to the data to ensure that the students are mastering the skills that we're then completely reteaching and having them revisit the need for individualized instruction within the platform. Next, we have Wincote. For math, they're averaging 13 hours and 2 minutes. And again, this is year to date. And then 89% of their students are master or passing lessons with 70 to 100% accuracy. 11% of students are passing with 50 to 60%. I'm sorry, 69% accuracy, and then there isn't any performing below that for math. For reading, it's 14 hours and 42 minutes is the average time on task. And the darker color, 73% of students are passing with 70 to 100%. 20% are passing between 50 to 69%, and then 7% are 0 to 40%. 49% passed. So again, it's going back and ensuring that if the student has a master lesson, that we revisit that skill. This is Cheltenham Elementary, 5 hours and 56 minutes. It's the average time on task year to date for math. For the completion, 96% of students are passing between 70 and 100%, and 4% are 50 to 69%. For reading, it's 7 hours and 55 minutes. So the more scattered here is 87% are 70 to 100% pass. 7% of students are passing with 50 to 69%, and then 6% are 0 to 49% pass. And then this is solidified. And again, this is the individualized computer-based for students. It's for math, it's 5 hours and 18 minutes. But of that, 100% of their students are passing with 70 to 100% passing passage of each lesson. And then for reading, it's 3 hours and 25 minutes. And 75% of students are passing with 70 to 100%. The 8% of students are passing 50 to 69%. And 17% of students are passing 0 to 49% pass. Again, this is more of a computer-based possible use with during when, but I also want to point out that in terms of instruction of what's occurring across each school, that may look different in terms of the specialized instruction and how it's occurring, which may be contributing to the numbers that we're seeing here. So student spotlight, this is a 5th grade student. And they're, so in terms of the year-to-date growth, so progress towards their typical growth, they've exceeded that at 115%. You see the stretch growth is like that extra push beyond the expected growth. So stretch growth would be near his grade level standard or grade level, which is why it will be at least 555 to 570 would be the stretch. But he has he's reached 520, the student has reached 520. And so the scale points, they're about 49% of the stretch growth. So at the beginning of the year, they were at grade 2. The second diagnostic, the third diagnostic, but either way, it's the second diagnostic here, it was flagged, so the teacher had to retake it. But oddly enough, the student performed higher there. And then after taking the diagnostic, it was still about the same, just a 9-point difference. But either way, they've grown at least 1 grade level through the usage of the program. And they've obviously have met their annual growth, but we're still encouraging that stretch growth for the student. The math diagnostic wasn't completed for the students. I wasn't able to pull that. And they're taking diagnostics through the remainder of this week. So these are our goals for iWriting as we look forward to towards the next school year, increased diagnostic completion across the district for individuals taking or usage of the iWriting. During professional development, teachers will review diagnostic results and lesson recommendations. And the program itself also supports with grouping of students. I think that's important to ensure that as you're providing instruction, you're grouping the students according to their skill deficits and the areas of growth that they need. And so that's the focus point for professional development. Ensure utilization of all components, because I think it's important that we're utilizing all aspects of the program, as it will ensure that we're targeting both grade level content in addition to the skills that the students need to improve upon. And then monthly updates to administrators. I think having eyes on the data to know what their teachers are or aren't doing, to know what they should expect. Dr. D's point when they're walking through completing walkthroughs is important that we are providing teachers and administrators with that information. And then again, increased walkthroughs, both building level administration, but also supervisors as well, as we're moving forward and placing expectations that we're then following up to ensure that it's happening and completing 5-hour walkthroughs for the program itself. But that is summary for iWriting. Any other questions?
Thank you, Ms. Pope. Ms. Lovett?
Thank you very much. So is iWriting used just with the students with IEPs, or?
At this point, yes. Previously, another school in the building utilized the program, but at this point, it's specific for students with IEPs.
And again, sort of, I guess, and you mentioned at the beginning that the K through 8 math and reading was grounded in a Common Core.
Yes, well, yes, it's called PA Math Ready is what you would see. And it's both for reading and math. That's based on Common Core, but then the others are specific interventions based on skill deficit.
Okay, and is this also sort of geared towards what their IEP goals are, or how does that?
Yes, so if you're looking at a student diagnostic, they may give you a breakdown of the student struggling with reading comprehension. It'll specify that maybe it's specific to informational text, and it will give you specific skills that you want to target, cause and effect. Other times, maybe phonemic awareness, and you want to then introduce those specific skill sets. So for me, if I'm sitting with a teacher and we're developing an IEP, I want them to look at not just this diagnostic, but obviously we have numerous other resources that we're utilizing. But when you're looking at that, what skill deficit are we then targeting based on the child's deficit? And then we're targeting a specific skill deficit with the baseline data of where they're performing in terms of their grade level. And that comes from iReady as well as other resources within the district.
And then my final question, which you sort of touched on for the goals at next year, it's sort of how are we, like, what are the staff, the teachers then doing with this information? Again, are they revising goals? Are they changing what the students are doing online? Or
so there's a number of things that will actually go into effect next year. I'll need to confirm this with iReady, but at this point we needed 3 data points of diagnostic. By next year, we should be able to open up, which is our progress monitoring diagnostics, so it's shorter. So that's something that teachers could then utilize to see the students' progression towards mastery of skills in between diagnostics. Our current diagnostics 3 times a year. Then there's what we have progress monitoring, which will also give us additional information that teachers may utilize both for IEP writing and development, and then progress monitoring for IEPs. So for me, the goal is to then coach our teachers to ensure that they're utilizing, breaking down the data, actually looking into what the skill deficits are and ensuring that we revisit that, and that we're providing specific instruction based on the skill deficits that are documented.
that was sort of, that's what I'm going towards. Yeah, okay. I appreciate that. One thing I'm going to mention is, and I don't want to be like a Luddite here, but there's been some recent criticism of iReady.
Yes.
You've seen that, yeah, and pretty significant criticism, especially around the fact that it doesn't seem to have a whole lot of basis in research, even though it claims to. And I don't know, I don't know, what either side of that it is right or wrong. I haven't looked into any of it myself, what I've read in some of the articles. But I just point that out there because there is all of a sudden this like swell of concern about the efficacy of iReady, and whether or not we're doing students a service or a disservice by using it, especially because it's that tool that I guess it's iReady where if you don't master it, you've got to go back to the beginning and you have to keep doing it over and over. Is that
Excel.
iExcel, that's iExcel. Okay, sorry, iReady. Yeah, that's iExcel, sorry. But iReady has had its own share of kind of criticism recently. And I don't know where we sort of fall on that, the kind of continuum of concern about that.
I mean, I'm definitely aware of the lawsuit that it's beyond iReady, is the actual parent company of the program itself. That is something that we're aware of and we're monitoring, but I think at this point, a number of things is that
the students'
progress.
We're monitoring their goals. I think Jackie mentioned this earlier, like ILET and Success Maker. I mean, we can show all this data and it might look good, but we can't really drill down to every single thing and say it's the actual program, even when they're doing well. But as long as we're progress monitoring goals, we're seeing improvement, and we know whatever a team is with one student, this plus the pedagogy of the teacher plus everything else that's in that child's day is successful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Like I said, I think I just have had some concerns because it's been there's been a very popular like blog post about it that's gone around, and then there's also been Newsweek, ABC, a whole bunch of like bigger news stations have picked it up about the concern that parents are having about the overuse of iReady. So
Thank you, Ms. Loman. Any other, Mr. Schultz?
Yeah, and for some of the graphics, what I was trying to get at in my understanding of them is, if it's showing growth within the context of a metric that iReady has invented for evaluating something, that doesn't necessarily mean to me that the student is learning or not learning. So trying to understand, when it says grade level 1 or grade level 3, is that externally done test to determine grade level, or is that iReady's internal assessment of grade level? And I don't need the answer to that, but I think that would help, especially if we're getting future iReady data presentations. I think it would be helpful to understand what are these numbers, what does it mean to have 90 to 100% completion of an iReady diagnostic test? I don't know what that means in terms of the student's outcome and impact on that student. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that for this presentation, it was time on task, so that 90 to 100% is specific to, 70 to 100% specific passage of a lesson within the platform itself, not the diagnostic. The diagnostic will look different in terms of the grade average.
Understood. Okay. And so, but even within that, what does it mean to have 100% of students passing within that lesson? I assume that's good, or maybe it means the lesson wasn't challenging enough, and so all the students raised it, whatever but understanding the context will be helpful.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Second to that, and as well, what is the cadence? I see monthly updates to administrators. So what is the cadence from diagnostic to review to implementation to that monthly update?
In terms of administrators at this point?
In terms of like teachers and students, like what's the cadence that the teachers actually going back to that information, integrating whatever they integrate, what's the action?
So the diagnostic itself is occurring 3 times a year. In terms of in terms of teachers going back to reviewing the diagnostic, that's on a teacher by teacher basis, especially as they're going to do this to develop their lesson. So at this point, we haven't developed a common specific time frame for that, which is what our goal is to next year. As the expectation is to what they're reviewing and what we're expecting them to do.
Oh, these are goals for next year.
Yes.
All these are.
Any other board questions? From public? I don't see any. All right, moving on. Thank you.
One more slide.
One more, all right. On this, or you mean
special education? For special
education. More sections. All right, here we go.
I think what we
Like hanging out.
very difficult thing in special education is to present a whole bunch of data, because we can really dig down, and we always want to keep in mind there's a reason for the I and IEP. So to look at information like this globally, I think what we really wanted to present was, when you look at this data, you're looking at usage. We want to say, listen, what we have moved forward with is being used, and we're seeing benefits from it. But to really drill down, we would have to do all student spotlights for 300 some students at the secondary level. We wouldn't have it done. So I preface that by saying the next slide, kind of going off of what was asked of me in February, is something that I am going to disaggregate more. But this would be, for example, I got to get the CHS data. I'm sorry about that. This was as of last week. So a lot of times when we look at data, we look at race, we look at students with IEPs, we look at ethnicity, we look at low socioeconomic. Say, okay, what percentage of total student population, this is broken down by building, are students that have IEPs? So you see, for example, Cedar Brook, 617, 24.4% of those students had an IEP. Then I dug into the system that we use through our PBIS, which is Swiss. So Swiss is a mechanism by which schools will, its really primary purpose is to data collect. It's not necessarily a gotcha or discipline, although it can turn. Okay, Swiss has broken down, PBIS has minor referrals versus major referrals. Minor referrals are generally classroom and teacher handled. They are used to provide data. They're used to provide data on who the student was, the number of, look for patterns, time of day, specific class, specific behaviors. so that an intervention can be put in place. A major referral would be an office referral, would be a power school handled by the administrator. So they would be your right to the code of conduct, level 1, level 2, level 3. Does that make sense? So I just give you some baseline here. So when I pulled the data from Swiss, you'd see here, for example, like CBK, 24.4%, the percentage of total referrals for students in special education. So in a perfect world, I guess we would want that number to be aligned, right? It doesn't mean that a school is, again, we can drill down, we can look at students, we might have students that have multiple members, but they also would have had interventions as a result of that. If you remember in February, for example, when we broke down and shared with you the information on restraints and seclusions, and 2 buildings in particular had higher numbers, and I broke it down and said, if you remove a certain number of students from there, and we were putting in more appropriate supports for that student, the numbers would balance out. That could be the case here. So I don't want to make it look like, again, like there's a big rise in students with IEPs, but the data is what the data is. We would have to really drill down specifically in each building for each particular student to see that coordination. So again, the way to read this, if I'm looking at Cedar Brook, right, 24.4% is the percentage of special education students, and the total referrals. So again, if I'm looking at this, if there was 100 referrals at Cedar Brook, 23, if you could, 0.8 of them would have been students with IEPs. Does that make sense? Okay.
So I'm gonna repeat it back just to make sure. So using Cedar Brook as a example, there's 617 students enrolled. Out of those 617 students, 24.4% of them have an IEP. And out of the total number of referrals, out of 617 students, the total number of referrals that come from students that have IEPs is 23.8%.
That total number of referrals isn't on here. It could be 500, it could be 400, it could be.
Right. I see. Dr. Watts?
So we have no idea whether the 24.4% represents unique children, correct?
It would be 24.4%.
Instead of 617, that is unique children. The 23.8%, is that unique children or is that unique incidents? So this data is seriously misleading because when I look at it, what I see at first glance, if I didn't understand that point, is that our elementary schools over-identify students with special education. Are other people seeing what I'm seeing? If you don't see this as incidents, but you see this as children. So
you can also,
you see, because, and Mr. Taylor is here, and I'm gonna put him on the spot.
Yeah, so that 55%, which we see there.
Yeah.
When I saw that last week, I was at heart.
I bet you did.
So I spent the weekend really digging into it. And I have a whole chart that I'm happy to share with you. That 55% represents 36 unique students.
Right.
And of those 36 unique students, I then disaggregated it by number of referrals. Do they fall in tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3? Right. In tier 3 constitutes 3 students.
So tier 3 meaning
the highest
magnitude of
correct. Right. So for one student, for one of those 36 students, that student has 27 referrals, individual referrals, right?
So that's a huge proportion of that 50%.
Correct. So I have that broken out for Wyndham, which I gave to Dr. Patton yesterday, finished. When I finished the round with BTR.
I'm so happy that it was successful.
We're here. Maybe don't watch.
Thank you.
So there is more information. I think I need numbers that is
I just, given the concern that our parents have about our students with special education needs and how we are educating them in our schools, I think we need to be really careful and clear about what our data are saying. And that we're able to talk about who these numbers represent. And yeah, because otherwise I think data tables get interpreted in ways that fuel more concerns. So I'm really glad you were here to give us that example. I'm sorry to jump
No,
point like
that's
that,
okay,
but
but this data
this is
is,
extremely concerning.
but it also, on the flip side, it could also be the amount of data that's being collected. Correct. To Mr. Taylor's point, you are collecting data for a
Yep.
student that has 27 incidents, bringing them to MTSS for the IEP team.
Sure.
And putting in intervention.
Absolutely.
So
that's the story that this chart's not telling.
correct, but this chart, right, for example, if you go to the Department of Ed website, you will see discipline data broken down across the country, right? You'll see discipline data broken down across schools and school districts and states, and you'll see it broken down by race, right? And you'll see that correlation, right, for minority students or those socioeconomic students that could, again, could bring you to a CPR moment. So the purpose of bringing this was to have this conversation, to bring this to light, to say that there is more to this, because the special ed data reporting site that I presented in the beginning with that gap proficiency data is a place that the public goes to see it, but what does that mean? And it's our job as educators and board to explain it. But the numbers are what they are. It's digging down deep into it that gives the explanation to it.
So one thing I disaggregated was our number of students whose primary diagnosis is autism versus whose primary diagnosis might be a specific learning disability or other health impairment. What I found in that was most of our students whose primary diagnosis is autism also have a positive behavior support. They also, 9 out of 10 times, have a one-on-one working with them for a significant chunk of the day to help them meet their behavior goals. Our students with autism, based on the number of referrals, are in a tier 1 intervention because their PBSP, positive behavior support plan, is working for them. Right. Our student at tier 3, who has 27, mostly minor referrals. I think that's an important distinction to keep in mind. Does not have that level of support yet. If that student were to have that level of support, those numbers might change for that student. So it's very contextual.
I was gonna say, can I also add to that?
That's a helpful story.
I think we were talking about, right, intervention supported. I also would say that it wouldn't even behoove us to break this down by grade level, because your kindergartners who've come in with some of the no skill, like school readiness skills, are gonna come in and be more disruptive. They're gonna come in and not follow, potentially not be compliant because they haven't learned those skills yet in a formalized setting. So I think even looking at that data could help us paint a bigger picture, because could the referrals be more for kindergartners, first graders versus fifth graders, right? I think that even tells.
See, if you're looking at it grade level by grade level, you can see the cohort and where the behavior issues tend to be in the cohort. So I know one grade that's moving through Whitcote has consistently had the bulk of the referrals, even with all the interventions, even with second step, even with all the interventions we provide, they still have a high number. So there's lots of stories that can be told.
Thank you for all of that. To help contextualize it a little bit further, even though clearly what we're seeing is that we always talk about how, like, any data set, any one test score doesn't define the student. These things don't define that school, but it is all part of the bigger conversation that we all need to be having together, like you said, Dr. Pepper, to explore what does this mean so that our families know, our staff knows, and we can that continues.
Yeah, because when you go online, you can find different correlation data sets, so different things broken down. Again, socioeconomic race, IEPs, as Mr. Taylor dug even deeper. That's the purpose of pulling this data together, is to say, okay, what do we got here, and let's drill down. It takes time. That takes a lot of time.
Is there a question online? I just want to see where there's a more.
Oh, is that what I don't, what do I do?
Is the go to
Click
more?
on the
Q&A.
Yep, Q&A. Yep. I want to.
Can you please, it's Dr. Robinson.
Dr. Robinson.
Dr. Robinson says, I want to caution that the story of Swiss data is that the problem is, and it is a problem-solving tool. Dr. Pat can share my caution as I shared it with him explicitly in sharing this data. These numbers need to align with the function of this data tool. Sorry, I can't come off with you. Thank you, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you.
If that helps. Thank you. Thank you for pulling over and
Yeah, and Dr. Robinson is correct, because as I said in the beginning, it's a monitoring tool. Swiss really does provide an incredible amount of data. It breaks it down. Mr. Taylor can probably go into better than I can because I've been here in a while. Setting, time of day, circumstances, what happened before, and it breaks it all down. And we do have students who have increased behavior needs, so their data is collected a little bit more closely, right? But it all has to be housed in a system to provide us that feedback loop to provide those interventions. Mr. Taylor, anything to add to that?
I've said enough.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Any other questions? It's past your bedtime, I think. Yeah. I don't see any other questions right now, so we can move on to our next section. Dr. Pullum. Thank you, Dr. Catrambone. Thank you, Ms. Pullum, and thank you, Dr.
We're not allowed to ask those questions.
No.
Okay. No?
Yep.
All right, regarding the Catrambone, I have a question. Can every para that is going to be working with a student with high needs be required to be an RBT?
Sorry, say that again.
So for every para that's working with a child that has high emotional behavioral needs, are you able to require that they get certified as an RBT? Not able to add that requirement. And then we have people who have trained specifically to be in Cheltenham versus Abington or Jenkintown, and they said there's a vast difference between the training systems that have been used. So with the recurring number of instances, is there any talk of making it?
I don't know if we mean different training systems.
We've had people who have trained Cheltenham versus training in Abington, Jenkintown, and they said the training is vast.
What's the
Basically,
difference?
Cheltenham has minimal training compared to Abington, but in-person sessions, mock scenarios that wasn't required for them to start with Cheltenham.
Ms. Schroeder, can you clarify what training for which employees?
So to be
they want me to be
para and stuff.
Thank you.
What's the training?
I was told ESS with the Abington, Jenkintown, and Kelly system with Cheltenham. So basically, they're saying that the Kelly system is ineffective and inefficient in their opinion, because they said the training that they received at the other district was much more effective.
Our Kelly system is our subsystem.
Yes, what they said
Yeah, we hire and train our own district paras. We have 84 of them.
And are they only trained the 2 days before the school year starts? So if they're hired this school year, they don't receive any training?
When they're hired, they receive onboarding training first with HR, but then they come down to our department with our their onboarding through special ed, and then they report to the building.
What is the onboarding training? How long is that?
I can get that to you.
Yeah, our paraeducators actually receive training throughout the school year. There are a number of required trainings that the paras have to participate over the professional development arc. So they receive training not just on the early dismissal days with faculty, but also separate training that is geared specifically towards them during the PD days, the full days, that is set up for their job classification. So our paras are invited to participate in these trainings, and for our long-term subs, they're actually invited to participate as well. I think what you're naming in terms of the Kelly substitute training, that is more about compliance than the actual training necessary to support the students in the schools. We provide that when they are staffed to us, and we interact with them on a regular basis.
But, okay, so you're talking about throughout the school year, but you said there was onboarding training, but you can't say what that is or how long that is.
Yes, Mr. Schultz.
No, I can, but I don't know. I don't think it's the time for me to answer that.
Can I ask just a general question? We recently engaged in a special education audit for the district. Strikes me that some of these questions will be answered through that audit. Is that fair?
I believe so.
That it will be an analysis of our programming, our training, and other things as well.
But if you want to provide for me the training, if they do, let me know.
Okay, but you can't tell me what the training is here, is what you're saying.
No, I'd be happy to provide the.
I don't need to get that training, I was just saying the length of time.
I think that's a question best answered outside.
I can answer that question for you. I'm not sure I'm following.
When I send emails though, my emails aren't always answered to people, so I wanted to ask in a public forum to get the public response because I don't.
Did you email me?
Not you.
Okay, if you email me, I'll let you know what. No, that's fine. If you email me, I'll lay out the training for you. I have it in a document. I just don't have it right here.
Okay, my concern is I want it to be public knowledge to parents that aren't always sure where to go on the website or who to go to.
Yeah, come right to me.
I also have another question. This is my last one for this. We've been told time and time again, Cheltenham Elementary houses the emotional support program. Time and time again, it's been publicly denied that we are the emotional support school, even though the lawyer said at the meeting that we were at that you guys can publicly say that. But it still has yet to be acknowledged. So myself and other parents are wondering about this because it's frustrating that a lot of us didn't even know that we house the emotional support program. I didn't know it's my son was in 3rd grade, and he has been dealing with many instances in his classrooms, violent, dangerous incidents. And my son's situation is not unique. It's happening to a lot of kids. So I think it would have a lot of parents feel a little bit better if it were like publicly acknowledged versus privately told, yes, we do house that program there, and then on the action plan, we'll know it's not designated.
I can answer that directly right now. I think that's an issue of semantics in that Cheltenham Elementary currently houses the emotional support classrooms for the elementary level. That does not mean it is an emotional support school, just like Winco is not the autism support school or anything like that. It just means that those individual schools house programs. And while it is not emblazoned on the front of the building, none of our programs are emblazoned on the front of the building like that. And it's not meant to be a secret by any means that those programs are housed there. But it's not, I think it's just a difference between the school versus the program.
I'm not asking for it to be on the side of the building, I'm just asking for it to be acknowledged because.
And I'm acknowledging it right now, that Cheltenham Elementary hosts the emotional support programs for K to 5 in Cheltenham.
So are we going to update the action plan so other parents can?
I think that has been addressed, but I will double check the question.
It wasn't acknowledged, it said it's not designated, but we have all the high need students or.
No, I appreciate the feedback, Ms. Schroeder, thank you.
If there's something you could say it. If you'd like to say it.
No. I think we should move along. We still have 2 more sections of the presentation that we have to get to. Dr. Catrambone will be in touch about the questions about the parents. Dr. Pimentel.
Good evening.
Evening.
My presentation will be a bit of an intermission because it's 2 slides long.
What?
So it should be quick.
Does it come with popcorn?
It does. That would take more time.
Go with the 2 slides.
So it'll be a short presentation, and for the members of the board, just want to thank you. This will be my last Ed Affairs meeting with all of you. It's been a great 10 years, and I really appreciate all the support that all of you provided over the years to some amazing things here. You guys are a great board, so thanks for your efforts. Appreciate it. Okay, so this is just a really quick touch-in from the previous gifted presentation. So there's only a tiny bit of new information. This is an old slide, just to set the table, so to speak. On the left-hand side was the total district population by race in 2017, when this work started. And on the right-hand side is the 2017 gifted population. The disproportionality is clear and obvious. And so then the update on the left-hand side is the district total population now, which is slightly shifted from 2017. So the bar has shifted, so to speak. And on the right-hand side are the September through May newly identified gifted students as of this year. So this was a slide that was presented before, but our N count was so low that it was hard to show anything. This is still a low N count. It's only students assessed this year. There's 300 something gifted students in total. This represents 50 students. So it's still a small N count. But we're now near the end of the year and near the end of the testing window. And the positive data has held. And so that's the presentation.
And this is the impact of the new approach that
Correct.
you and Dr. Sachs
Yes.
described.
That is correct. Yes.
Any questions? Is that
That's it.
all right?
Yes.
Awesome. Any questions for the board for Dr. Leah? Just no.
Can I just take a moment to thank Dr. Pimental for all of his work over the past years and to just express how sincerely we are going to miss him.
Thanks, Shiva.
Thank you, Dr. Pimental. Thank you for this work. Thank you. I'll get to that. And we wish you all the best in your next chapter. And this, Erin, if you could please put in the Q&A. If you are still on, where you reside in the district, and then we can look at that question. I don't see that there. But we can. Oh, yes.
Well, I just wanted to, Dr. Pimental's presentation, which was very fast and brief, but as I understand it, those are gifted identification numbers that are aligned with our actual demographics.
Yes.
That's the first time I've ever seen.
Yes, an incredible amount of work to redevelop.
You can't hear me, but
it's not even
excellent capstone on the decade of research.
Sorry.
I just wanted to make sure that those numbers are, they look to be a pretty parallel racial demographic breakdown to our actual student population, which I've never seen before in our gifted identification process. I know we have been working 10 years towards this goal. I just wanted to call that out, which is like study excellent capstone, and our students are well served by processes that are
I echo that.
Yes, Mr. Schultz, you mentioned it earlier, seeing data pointing in the right direction. This is another example of data pointing in the right directions. All right, Ms. Girman.
Hello. Beginning and end. So we're going to talk about the empowerment program in Cheltenham, our EPIC program. Again, I'm not Siobhan, but I will do my best to explain, and then she will appear from the heaven anytime that anything is out of place. Okay, so Dr. Kat, you could move us forward. So EPIC had a mission statement that we developed in conjunction with some stakeholders, that the empowerment program is dedicated to providing comprehensive support and opportunities for identified students who are facing challenges in the traditional school setting. Our mission is to empower students to reach their full potential by offering personalized assistance, credit recovery opportunities, holistic services, and additional pathways to success. And as such, we're committed to creating a flexible and personalized education experience for our students in a caring and equitable environment. Each of our students comes into the program with specific academic and social emotional goals. With the help of teachers and counselors, students are able to engage in the program to ensure that they reach these goals. So we established EPIC in the fall of 2024, and the goal was to particularly support our students who were overage and undercredited, as well as those students who needed support transitioning back into the high school setting, or students who were experiencing school attendance and engagement challenges. The whole purpose of the program is that it was meant to be supportive in nature, with small group meetings available, therapeutic services to address holistic issues, and then the combination of online and traditional instruction to support students. One of the things that we did is we developed criteria to help determine students who would be offered the opportunity to go to EPIC. They should be credit deficient for the grade they're in compared to their same age peers. They would be overage compared to the grade they should be in. They should have an attendance of at least 85% of their days, or there must be an existing SAPE. All students who were referred needed to have a Tier 3 MTSS plan. EPIC is not a special education program or placement, but does provide special education support. A student's IEP should include support and services that can be provided by EPIC without amending the IEP. And then students who are returning from hospitalization are eligible for enrollment at EPIC, provided a soft landing. Softer. So in 2024, 2025, for our first year, we had 50 students in August. 40 students were then enrolled. 5 returned to the high school at the end of semester 1. We had 4 students withdraw from the district. 2 earned diplomas. 74% of students eligible for the diploma were expected to graduate. 4 students took the ASVAB and met with the U.S. Navy recruiters. 95 credits were earned through the online credit recovery courses. 4 marking period 3 honor roll students and 15 speakers in Dress for Success. So that was last year. By comparison, this year we had 42 students start in August. 47 students were currently enrolled. 6 students returned to the high school at the end of semester 1. 87.5% of our students are eligible for a 87.5% of our students are eligible for a diploma and expected to graduate. 106 credits were earned through our online credit recovery courses with an average grade of 86.2%. 4 marking period 3 honor roll students, and again, 15 speakers in Dress for Success. The NASA virtually from Ohio and Hanwha, Philadelphia shipyard. In particular. So for the 26-27 school year, the plan is actually to have EPIC come back to the high school. The number of students who are requiring the type of support that we had has shifted, resulting in shifting in programming moving forward. We are still going to be able to support those 40 students with new programmatic structure. They will move into an EPIC schedule, though modified if they require credit recovery. The current schedule will be replicated to some extent for the 26-27 school year based on the advice of the staff. So what that would look like for students in the class of 2026, 27, and 28 who need credit recovery beyond the 4 credits that could be earned over the summer through credit recovery for summer school 2026. The members of class of 2027, if a student has less than 16 credits, they should enroll in summer school. For members of class of 2028, if they have less than 8 credits, they should enroll in summer school. And then the program design, again, for 26, 27, there's going to be credit recovery available in blocks 1 and 4 with dedicated teachers for those content areas. And then students are going to be enrolled in regular classes in blocks 2 and 3. I want to talk a little bit more about why we did that. And then the wellness supports will continue, but will be more widely available for student use. We'll maintain our Lakeside counselor in the secondary home and school visitor and school social worker. They will still have access to the mental health and wellness counselor, and they will have access to the SAP counselor and the drug and alcohol counselor. None of those things will go away. So I want to pause for a moment to ask if we have questions about any of the scheduling pieces of that. Okay.
When you say they're going back to that credit recovery will be in 1 and 4 and regular classes, is that part of whatever's happening in CHS that day? So these kids will not be educated in a separated program
For the credit recovery piece,
but it'd be like taking a different elective in a certain way.
So one of the things that we were finding, the biggest issue that we were having for our students at EPIC is the large numbers of them need elective credit. But we can't provide that. We did the best that we could with our science teacher, particular Ginger Mosier, had a number of wonderful science classes that we offer to students as a science credit or an elective credit, brain science, neuroscience. But often what was happening is a lot of our students were not able to get the elective credits that they needed, being in a separated place that they couldn't necessarily access during the school day. So having them back at the high school will allow them much more access to a larger variety, which will allow them to be more successful. They were really successful, but it definitely was with some finagling on our part and trying to make some of that work. And there were for sure some places of frustration for students wanting to make up electives or get elective credits and not really being able to. So that's one of the things that adjustment, that move will address for students. They will still have the credit recovery in block 1 and 4. And in terms of the schedule, they will still have the check-in and check-out period during that block in the morning and the afternoon that will be staffed by current EPIC teachers. And the goal is to be able to have a teacher who specifically can support science and math, and then a teacher who can support English and history, so that students are getting some real core content support in those credit recovery classes for block.
Yeah, just curious, are the criteria, which were early, or the EPIC criteria, they're gonna remain the same? Is that gonna be tweaked at all? Sort of who's eligible to participate?
So it could be tweaked a little bit, although it really shouldn't have to be too much. Looking particular, back to criteria. Mm-hmm. 545. So for the most part, it's going to be the same set for students. The only difference really would be is that because we don't have to worry about the ability to support students with special education supports that may not exist at EPIC, but they would exist at the high school, that would be the only place that there could be a little bit more space. Other than that, everything would stay basically the same. And the other benefit too is the mental health piece. The challenges, similarly with the elective pieces, were the staffing being shared potentially between both buildings. Now you're going to have staff fully available every day for those, as opposed to certain days of week that were happening and bouncing back and forth between two locations. Okay. So back to slide 51. Oh, I stopped short. Yeah, second to last slide. So what does it mean for the EPIC staff? So one teacher is being reassigned to Cedarbrook Middle School. The remaining teachers are going to join back at CHS on Main. The teachers are going to continue to support EPIC as part of the CHS staff. And then again, we'll support the check-in and check-out in the morning and the afternoon, as well as credit recovery, Dress for Success, Tier 3 intervention plan management, and mental health supports. And then the administrative and support staff will also return to the high school to be embedded on site with the CHS team. One EPIC teacher and one CHS teacher have been released as interventionists to try to provide additional support, not just for EPIC students, but for students at the high school in general. And again, the goal here is to try to prevent that programmatic isolation and support students in a little bit more of a fluid fashion that allows them to move between the systems as needed, as opposed to full-scale place changes.
Any questions? Ms. Blitzstein, please. Thank you for this. When you say that one EPIC teacher and one CHS teacher have been released as interventionists, they're going to be pushing in.
Yeah, so there's classrooms sort of twofold. So in some respects, it depends on the teacher. So one of the teachers will be able to support during that credit recovery period, and then another one of the teachers would have an actual support period is our goal. And then otherwise, yes, pushing into other classes depending on sort of need and where students end up, where they land. But that's the goal.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Questions from the public? And I don't think we have any questions on this particular part. Thank you, Ms. Girman, for sharing all of that with us. Mr. Schultz?
I do have a question. I was just trying to make, sorry for the delayed response. So when we first kicked off EPIC, I know that one of the positives of the program was that there were certain students that really did need another scene. Like they just needed to not be in that building in order to find their footing and kind of recover from that. So I appreciate that there's still plans to serve the overall need that initially inspired EPIC, and that I have confidence that that will move forward and will continue to iterate. For the category of students that really do need a mechanism to restart somehow, it seems like that need probably will still exist for certain students forever. And so I just wanted to throw that out there as I guess this isn't really a question. It's more of an observation that could be something that maybe we could reflect on ways to help those students, maybe through targeted like more counseling supports or other types of support intervention that that Epic would have been providing and maybe now in Epic hands.
Absolutely. And what we do plan on doing is providing some of that support within the high school through the counseling suite in particular. Ms. Smith and I have been working to make sure that we are lining up the appropriate supports. And I also plan on over the summer, just because, I'll have some more space and time, visiting some models for student support centers that we might be able to replicate into the high school. We have already preliminarily planned for some level of restorative practice or social emotional support center that we will staff a teacher to provide some of that support for students on a fluid basis, because you are absolutely right. We are especially through the disaggregation of our data, we are coming across a very small percentage of students that do need heightened support, and we would like to be intentional about providing it within the confines of the high school. And just to note, within the data that Ms. Girman just presented around the number of students that are over at Epic, we did find this year that we had a higher number of students that required mental health supports for challenges than we had last year. So we are keeping an eye on that as well so that we can proactively plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Savage. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gurman. There's one last question, and thanks, Ms. Freckle, for putting where you reside in the township. She lives on Boyer Road in Cheltenham. And the question is, teachers of special education students are potentially tasked with IEP, FBA, and Swiss data. How do you ensure Swiss data reporting happens with fidelity in addition to IEP behavior plan data, if this is the data system you are relying on to monitor behavior trends?
Well, Swiss is not the only system that we use to do behavior trends. Every individualized education plan, they have to be progress monitored on their goals, period. I mean, that's to be in compliance. So every case manager must collect data on the student and their goals, and then any other behavioral data which might come through Swiss, which draws rise to maybe student needing a reevaluation, student needing an additional specially designed instruction on their IEP, or maybe needs a goal tweaked, or maybe needs a goal to be added, could come from that information source.
Dr. Watts?
I think one way I'm reading Ms. Fidaco's question is she's asking if there's a process for monitoring the fidelity of the Swiss reporting data as closely as what you're describing with the IEP data, so that they can be kind of synced together, that the systems work together.
Yeah, you can, because that's a whole school thing.
Yeah, so I was gonna say that's part of our PBIS programming. There is a Swiss fidelity that occurs every year as part of PBIS. They do a tiered fidelity inventory through MCIU, and part of what that inventory looks at is Swiss reporting. And they are reporting out on a regular basis what that Swiss data looks like as part of that fidelity.
Yeah, that's part of the monthly tips meetings that the school PBIS and leadership teams are having. I do want to elevate that we have a lot of intentionality as we are approaching Cheltenham Elementary School for next year. We are recognizing that they, as a staff and also as a PBIS team, will be needing and will receive some additional PBIS training so that the systems necessary to monitor all of the Swiss data and draw that through line from the Swiss data to the serious incident reports to the special education data, that is restored in an appropriate fashion. Also, just for Ms. Fidaco's, to answer a part of her question, the school counselors at Cheltenham Elementary in particular and across the district actually have access to the Swiss data, and there are teams in each elementary school that pull that data, and they have monthly meetings. And kudos to Principal Taylor in particular, because he puts together the most fabulous presentations to share with his school team during their faculty meetings. They're absolutely spectacular. And the level of intentionality around disaggregating that data is really what drives school improvement.
Thank you, Ms. Savage. Any other questions, Mr. Burdell Williams?
Yeah, just a general comment first. That was a lot. Thank you, Doc. And I was kind of saving my comment for the end because it was more general to the first two sections where there was a lot of gap analysis, right? Things that we want to do goals. And one of the things that, that I want to know that we're thinking more about is just ensuring that we have SMART goals in place, right? So a lot of generalizations, more increase, which sound like we want to move in the right direction, but just as we're thinking about the intentionality behind that, criticality around SMART goals, I think is extremely important. And I know I didn't see it as much in the first two sections, but I saw the intentionality there. So just an observation and some feedback from my perspective related to just an opportunity for us. And I've seen us think that way, and I know we are. And so I was, trying to piece together if it's fitting inside of school improvement plans where I know we see SMART goals, then I could see all of it, kind of coming together and synergizing in that way. But wanted to make sure I didn't leave without just expressing an observation from my perspective. I think has a lot of value. The intent to do it, how we intend to work, or how administration also does that work. Essentially. So I'll be back.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any other questions or comments? Board questions for the public? I don't see any other hands or red bubbles. So with that, I thank you, everyone. That was a true team effort from, I think, everyone that exists within the Office of Education and Student Services here tonight. So thank you to everyone for all of that. In fact, I will take a motion to adjourn. Second. All right, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Good night.